this meeting of the Co-op Budget Committee to order at 6:32 p.m. This is a regular meeting of the Co-op Budget Committee, which occur on the fourth Thursday of each month. All meeting dates appear on the SAU41.org website, and the agenda was posted more than 24 hours in advance on the website and physically posted at the SAU office, HBMS, and HBHS. I would like to introduce myself, Darlene Mann, and the Budget Committee members who are present for tonight's meeting, which are Dave Blinn, Lauren Rydstrom, Raul Blanchet, and Matt McGuire. I'd also like to introduce and thank members of the administration who are here this evening, our BA Kelly Seeley, our high school principal Rick Barnes, and our middle school principal Bob Thompson. Going back to the other committee members who are missing, Tom Enright has an excused absence for this evening, and we're awaiting Brian and John. If you could all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to agenda adjustments. I don't have any. Does anyone else have any for the evening? Seeing none, we can move on to appointment of a meeting observer, which was Brian, who is not here right now. So Lauren, you're next on the list. If you could take that role this evening, that would be great. Moving on to the approval of minutes, we all received draft minutes of our October 25th meeting. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from that meeting. From Dave, seconded by Raul. Any comments or questions, changes? Seeing none, all those in favor of the minutes from the October 25th meeting?
Right.
Opposed? Okay, that's 5-0-0. Seeing no members of the public present, we will skip public input and move on to our FY19 budget discussions. I'd like to take a minute and just thank Bob and Rick for being here this evening. You guys make this trip to us every year, and we really do appreciate the perspective you bring, the updates and the information, especially for those members who don't have children in either of the schools. It's an opportunity to understand what you're bringing forward and just kind of where the schools are at this point. So I'll let you two duke it out about to see who wants to go first tonight.
I can go. All right.
Okay.
You can be the opening act.
The opening act, right, yeah. Take notes. I just thank you, everybody. I just wanted to, just kind of as a year in review, our profile came out recently, and once again, Hollis Brookline High School is one of the top, elite high schools in New Hampshire, and I really feel that's a collaboration of, as a result of the collaboration from the top down, from the superintendent's office, the school board, to the budget committee. The working relationship that we've developed over the years has produced tremendous results and continues to produce tremendous results, all with a really fiscally responsible budget. So I appreciate everyone's efforts. So you have our sheet. The sheet I'm really going over is the items under the round 3.1. That's the most recent iteration. In terms of personnel, we're looking to reduce some of our class sizes with a 1.0 offering. For a teacher of an area to be determined at this point, we're doing the master schedule much earlier than we have in the past, and we know that some of our class sizes are not where they want to be. If you've been reviewing any footage of the school board meetings, our numbers continue to go up. This year we had about 42 transfer students come in. That's double what we typically have. I don't know if that's going to continue, but every year when we have success, we get more and more people and students. It's a great problem to have, but it does present challenges from a financial standpoint and a class size standpoint, because that's a cornerstone of our success, maintaining those proper ratios. So we're looking at that, and additionally sharing a 0.2 position with the middle school for French. French continues to grow. We continue to have one of our teachers at the high school now, I think for the third year in a row, has had to take on an extra section of French, and that's about what the average dollar cost is to be able to teach that course. So instead of teaching 5, they end up teaching 6 courses, which is a lot, but the demand is there for the program. And our world languages program is, I would put it with the top, the best in the state. Their numbers are amazing, especially when you look at their advanced placement numbers, and then also what they do for kind of the student that's in the middle of the something for everybody in that program, that curriculum. Moving into academics, into some of the resources, we need to replace our Running Start, our calculus textbooks. Currently, regular calculus has been using the AP Calc textbook. It's not necessarily the most appropriate book for that, so we're looking to, and it's also a Running Start course. So the college, I think it's SANU, dictates the book we should be using for that course, and so that $20,000 is that price tag is what you see is for that replacement. The good news is that will allow us to use the AP textbooks that were being used for that to shift them back into service into the AP class, which will allow us to push that cycle out a little bit further in terms of replacement, because we'll be able to use those textbooks for the class that they're supposed to be for.
Just really quickly, do you want questions throughout, or do you want me to wait until the end? Or
Whatever works for you, Mike. Since it's a long list,
yeah.
we can do it throughout.
Okay, so I just have a question about those Running Start textbooks. You mentioned that the university is the one choosing the text. I know the Running Start courses are new, but how often do we anticipate that changing? I mean, I don't know that it's probably shorter than our normal cycle of when we would be replacing textbooks, I would assume, but I mean, it's not like an annual or...
I wouldn't anticipate it being annual, especially for math. When you get to some of the English classes, you can see it be more frequent. It's a business model for them. They know they can't necessarily keep flipping changing the textbooks often. So I don't anticipate it to be annual. I think these will last us for probably at least 5 years, hopefully.
Is this the
longer.
first year we've done that, run the Running Start program for calculus, or?
This is the second year, I believe, we've done it, yeah. At least
Which university is the one that's...
This one is Southern New Hampshire.
Okay, thank you.
And the partnerships we've had with the local universities or through NCC have allowed the bulk of our senior math classes to be offered, have the potential for dual enrollment, which when you add up the numbers of credits that students have earned through dual enrollment, it's a tremendous cost savings.
Do you see a big shift between students choosing those courses versus AP, or?
No, it's a funny thing, because you would think with the AP not necessarily being accepted in terms of college credit, you would think, and where these are largely certainly in New Hampshire, you might think that the AP designation, that stamp on the transcript, is still the premium. So
okay.
it tends not to be. But if you have a student that's going to be staying in state, it makes sense. Going
Sure.
to Plymouth and everything else, it certainly makes sense. Or even a student that's headed off to community college, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
So students are enrolling them, but I haven't seen them. The College Board has a pretty good lockdown on their curriculum and their offering.
Okay, thank you.
The Spanish 3 textbooks, unfortunately, those were coming to starting to come at the end of their cycle. We found that they're no longer being offered, so we're having to switch to a new publisher or a new book, and would like to change them one level at a time, so they just put in for one level this year at the $7,000. We have our Project Lead the Way, which we were shifting. We had a huge shift last year from everything being housed under the mathematics department. To some degree, Stacy Plummer, our math department, had certainly oversees them, but we've just separated them out into 3 distinct departments of computer science and engineering and math. And we have a former student who's running that Project Lead the Way program now that we're very, very excited about in the engineering. And these are the fees that we use to train that individual to stay current with the curriculum and the resources that are associated with that curriculum. The chairs, the small, the $1,000, we're looking to reconfigure pending the outcome, of what happens with the warrant article or the STEM Center. We're really looking to redesign the existing computer science room, because right now it's it's literally computers facing the wall. It's not a very collaborative type of environment. We'd like to move something similar to what kids would see in industry and have more round tables where they can collaborate and do some group projects together and work and communicate together. Let's see. Any other questions on that, academics? Okay. Moving on.
I'm sorry.
Nope.
The HB, the Change Challenge Day?
So that's something in there. We're having our challenge day is a really a school culture initiative that was brought forward by a club called HB The Change. It's a program designed to build empathy, resilience training, and there's some anti-bullying pieces in there, and really bring kids together from kind of a spectrum of the student body. We have about 75 students this year. It was funded through donation through Rotary and through the remaining funds of the class of 2018 to come up, and it's around that dollar figure. Other schools in the area have done it and had really great results, and students are really feeling the need. And I agree with it's kind of a really innovative culture, strong kind of school culture building activity, and so that's an earmark for the following year, pending the outcome of this year, which I expect to go pretty well. We'll have members of the community participating in that, and it's supposed to be a really solid bonding experience for students. It's not something we've done a lot of in the past, and so I think it's an important piece with a lot of the mental health. And it's not a mental health program, but with a lot of the things that we see going on in society to try to address that and have kids come together in a way to be more accepting of one another. It is an ongoing focus that we'd like to have, one of the pieces of the programs that we're looking to offer. So on the computer side of things, this is really what I'll call kind of the tip of the spear of a much larger plan that I intend to roll out in January. We're looking to present to all of you and to the school board a 5-year technology plan for the high school to bring us up to where we should be. We have our infrastructure with the wireless infrastructure that was going in. We needed to put that in before we even started to embark on adding more devices. Now that that's in the finishing stages of being installed, we're looking at bringing in some more Chromebooks. So this is just kind of the beginning of what we're going to see further on. And again, I look forward to bringing that forward in January so we can lay that out and show you in installments how we plan on bringing the entire school up to full speed when it comes to technology and infrastructure. The social studies department, so you have 125 Chromebooks in there, and associated carts. The social studies department's taken the lead with what I'll call the digital textbooks. They've been doing that for probably close to 5 years now. They're one of the first departments to take that on, and they have the need for them to have that more technology at their disposal to utilize is important. So they've been waiting for these for a while, and it's an important piece for them to be able to deliver their individual curriculum. We had to shuffle some things around there. You'll see some things that were zeroed out, and those were, to try to get us closer to our number, but we think that will be able to get us what we need for next year again, that's just the beginning of a much larger and more comprehensive plan to come for the following years.
I'm sorry, Rick, did you say, so is the 5-year plan draft, let's call it, or the initial out of it, expected soon, or are you saying there's like a initial plan to get us through the next year or so until that?
So what you're seeing here is the initial plan because we're at a stage right now where we're in the existing computers that we have been used heavily, and they're in need of replacement. I think we can probably squeeze one more year of life out of them, if you will. This is this amount of computers is the bare minimum of what we need to get through next year. But then in this coming January, I want to roll out a 5-year plan to say what it's going to look like, which department, and what specifically in each of those areas that we're going to look to roll out over the next 5 years, because we're in need of a major technological overhaul in terms of devices and needs. Kids certainly use their phones and that type of thing, but that's just not adequate to do some of the work that we're asking them to do. And things like providing a student devices. We have a lot of varying needs. We have the best physics department, I would argue, in the state of New Hampshire. A Chromebook might not necessarily cut what they need for needs, but those devices are much more expensive than a Chromebook. So, we want to look at the needs of individual departments, and math would be another one. English, each curriculum has its own needs. Journalism has specific needs with Adobe software, where not everybody needs to have access to that software. So we're trying to find the right match, and I think we have a good sketch right now of what that looks like, but now we need to dive into the weeds and get into the very specifics of licenses, machines, and specs on the machines and those types of things, so we can propose those in a phased-in approach.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, because I think that's something we've been, I think we always struggle to understand the technology needs between just the wireless device things you need and what are they called? Wireless. Help me, Matt. Routers. And
Yep.
whatever you need. See, after all these years, I still don't have it right. And then just the physical hardware that the
Right.
students need to use and things like that. So I would really appreciate that type of a plan. I think it's something that would be really helpful, something for us to look at as we've adopted new ways of looking at facilities needs and things like that. I think that would be really helpful for
Yes,
for
and
us
I
and
think
for the board.
I appreciate that the approach we're really looking at is changing the way we look at technology from just the machine, but seeing it as a piece of infrastructure for the building, because that's what it's become. Like a roof or anything else. That's what these devices have become, and technology means a lot of different things now, and it's evolved, and a lot of people jumped in right ahead of us and done things like MacBooks for everybody, and I don't think that's necessarily an approach that we need. As I can see Kelly shaking her head, and I would agree. But so we have the benefit of a lot of other people and a lot of other work that's been done, and then we have the history of doing things our own specific way, and we have the good fortune of having really talented teachers that are on the front edge of things, but they're at a stage right now where they need the right tools to really go beyond where they currently are.
So incorporated with that plan, would there be, aside from understanding how much it actually costs, are there potential recommendations like a lease initiative for the district to purchase them over like a 3 or 5 year lease period so that we equalize the payments over each budget? Or
I don't know that we're so much looking at leasing at this point. I'm not saying that's a no, it's just a standard amount that we would apply to each year.
Okay.
So this kind of, as I'd be looking at the SAU level too for the other two districts with all the equipment we're buying at the other schools, that is being approached as kind of a big pool to take advantage of buying more stuff together versus 3 different things going out to try to buy things.
Bulk.
If you do bulk buys, you're going to get way better pricing.
Well, we do have the advantage with the transformation that middle school has undergone. There's been a lot of work, and I know Bob will speak to that in a little bit in terms of some of the work that he's done will meet some of the needs in our building, but there are other needs that we'll need. And I think over the years, at least over the last 5 years as the SAU, there's been a lot more alignment with bulk purchasing and not just going out and buying something on my credit card and asking for it to be reimbursed, for lack of a better phrase.
What we've been doing for several years is we look at all 3 districts, we say, okay, all of them together, we need 80 Chromebooks. And Rich takes that 80 Chromebooks to these vendors and gets the best deal.
Okay, and then being consistent with whatever we're buying, that it's the same type of gear, same brand across all the districts, so we're not buying incompatible stuff that's not going to...
Right. And even within the certain types of machines, I'll give you an example. Some of the laptops that we've had over the years, one year we had, it was probably, 8 years now, those are our laptops. They came in, we're really excited to have these great laptops, but then we had another version of the laptop and then another version of the laptop, and it starts to give the IT people fits because they're just a little different enough where they create issues within the network, and it becomes very difficult. And within that, too, the infrastructure piece is the personnel piece, understanding that we can't have a ton of people that we're hiring, but by the same token, if you're going to bring in a lot of machines, you need to figure out what the support is for those machines in hardware and software. And then the real big piece, the whole reason why we do this at all is how is it going to impact instruction? And we feel like we need to be able to rationalize and justify, if we want X, this is how it's going to change the current instructional landscape, and be able to speak to that to make it make sense for everybody.
Okay, and as part of it too, also making sure that our connectivity, our connection for whatever our data rates coming into the buildings and stuff is
absolutely
scale as well as we bring more equipment in.
And that's why we've gone slowly with this, maybe slower than most people would have wanted, because this current backbone should get us to be able to support 2,000 devices. So I'm very comfortable with that. Whatever we bring in, we're going to be, we're not going to exceed that, knowing that. Then again, we know we're always going to have to expand that, but we want to make sure that it's going to be able to work, because that's pretty important too. Otherwise, it's a huge waste.
Yes.
But the wireless in my number of years there has never been better from a staff perspective. Students might say different things different times, but it depends on what they're trying to download and what they're trying to watch.
Okay. Is the network still kind of set up to provide like the teachers and the school-related stuff priority on the network data
Yes.
traffic versus the students' web surfing?
That's my understanding. I'd have to ask Rich Raymond specifically on that, but I don't see the number of complaints in the last 3 years about the wireless not working or shutdowns and that type of stuff. I have not seen that anecdotally happening. So far it seems to be working pretty well. And on any given day, we're supporting about 500 devices anyways, staff, students, everything. The one big shift that will come, though, I believe, is once we start loading more computers in, and however that goes, whatever form that takes, the priority is going to be given to the devices in the building, not necessarily my smartphone I brought from home,
Okay.
that will ruffle some feathers. But the idea is that these are the devices that the network is there for first. Right now, kids are using their devices because that's what they have, and they're making that work. And they're being very creative and flexible, which is great. But we can do better.
I have a question. Are you considering cloud services and thin clients as part of the potential plan?
Yes, but I think we have to be careful with that. With in terms of data gathering, I know there's an RSA now that's limited, and I don't think necessarily in a bad way, the numbers of apps and things that we use. So where it makes sense and it's secure, I would say yes. That answers the question.
I mean, if the military uses it, I'm sure the Hollis Brookline High School will go.
Yeah, I just might.
We should consider using it.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to make sure whatever we use is secure and
There's definitely problems there with HIPAA information, privacy regulations.
I'm just bringing it up. That's part of the plan that's being considered.
Yeah, I'm completely open to it. We just need to make sure that to your point that we have to be careful about where it can be accessed from and that type of thing. When it comes to personal information, in terms of academics.
I mean, I see it from the point of view of instead of having to buy new devices every so many years, the data primarily and the applications are stored in the cloud, so you don't need to be buying equipment so often.
Yeah, one approach. The only reason I chimed in there is because I work in the defense business, and it's easy to say, and I know Ryan does. It's easy for people to say, like Amazon Web Services has a government version, but anyways. If you have a data compromise, it's not easy to go in and clear it out, for instance, so it's just not trivial. But what you can do, to your point, is set up a cloud type, like a local installation that's like a cloud sort of approach, where you then have thin clients that are basically like Arduino, little, all you need is a processor basically to run the peripherals, and then whatever program you have is basically on a server on a rack somewhere. It's not, I'm interested to see what you guys come up with. Because another thing is just leasing devices or something rather than purchasing them and having a regular refresh cycle.
Every 2-3 years.
Yeah, there are definitely different ways to get there. It's just which way makes sense for us and for the specific needs that we have, because we really do have talented teachers, and they're absolutely pushing the envelope in terms of what they can use technology for in really creative ways on their own, and everything we give them they take full advantage of. So I really want to accelerate that as much as possible in a way that makes sense financially, but it's time. Now it's time to do that definitively and lay that out and follow it. Let's see.
Do you see any way, or do you see in education, is there any way to use technology to create efficiencies as far as the staff-student ratios, administration-student ratios? Because in business, we buy technology to
Right.
Save manpower.
Yep.
Right. But in education, it doesn't seem to do that. Is there an opportunity to do that at any point?
I think there can be when you look at we're on the verge now, and we've had discussions. It's just not quite ready to roll out. I would like to see us offer more of our own authentic online courses, so our own HB courses, online curriculum, and I would say you could have more students on those courses than you could in a regular classroom, because you're not dealing with any classroom management. You're dealing certainly with more grading and those types of things. the problem is in education, one of the constants is that ratio or that interaction with the teacher sometimes is the most important thing. I'd like to see a lot more hybrid type of situations. We are using Odysseyware, which is a software we purchased, but can more of our own curriculum into, and it has led to students not being in the building as much. So from that standpoint, the student ratio is going down because Johnny is out working but doing his coursework online, because being in school is not necessarily what's working for them, but their online coursework is working, and that's increasing. And this year it's taken off, and so I would personally like to see us use a lot less of VLAX. We have a ton of VLAX usage through and they do a good job, but I feel like we could do a better job with that and control that a little bit more and have a more better control of the student's experience. So yes, but I'm not sure necessarily in the way that that would be any kind of drastic reduction, because we also have, if you've seen our NESDEC numbers, which I'm sure you have, there's kind of on a steady increase. At least they're projected to be, as much as we can rely on them. But I can tell you, more and more kids are coming every year, transferring in from out of state, and we had a number of them this year. Was almost overwhelming, just every day walking in, even through August, to continue to see, and it's the reputation of the district as a whole, because they often have little ones in the other schools too, and they're coming here, and because they like our size. But so we always do the same thing. We're looking for efficiencies too. When we adopt a platform like Power School and attendance and things like that, we're looking for ways to take away some of the more trivial functions so we can redirect resources in a way that are more efficient and have more of an impact. So laptops extend to staff laptops too. So the replacement cycle we've been replacing 10 pretty steadily of the staff laptops, and I see that continuing. I know there's a need to upgrade our server, because we have a number of applications with our registrar and our SAU employee that we share with the SAU and Carol Tyler, and the good work that she's been doing in terms of efficiencies and creating modules through Power School and for the district. She's been phenomenal, but she needs a server to be able to, a sandbox, if you will. I'm not sure if I'm using the term right, but to be able to test out items before she goes live with them, especially when we're dealing with student data. Coming down safety, we would like to see, and I know there's a grant that's been submitted for a number of security cameras. We have what I would say is good coverage in the building, but in today's day and environment, I would like full coverage, and we're not at the full coverage range yet. Most recently, we put in cameras outside of the restrooms, which has been very helpful and beneficial. Because if there's something that's going to happen, typically a restroom is a good place to go. But now that we can see the coming and going, we can have conversations with individuals. So from a safety standpoint, that's worked out pretty well. But I think we need more cameras, and that we would share with the local authorities too, to be able to see what's going inside the building. It's just the world that we live in now. We need to continue to provide those, and it's a real important safety
these
feature.
Cameras are videotaping you for creating videos and storing them?
Yes, I believe it's a cloud-based storage, and for a certain number of days that we can go back and pull them off of the DVRs if we need to. So I see them as prevention, because our kids know that they're watching, and they figure out pretty quickly when a new camera's put in because someone does something that they shouldn't, and then and they realize it's there, and then the word gets out. So they are an important prevention tool. And it's unfortunate, but it's just the world we live in. I would not want to be in a building without security cameras, and I feel like we need more of them. So phasing those in, I think, makes sense.
And so I see the note about the grant. So is this related to the grant from last? Did we get a grant?
Well, the application, it's sort of related. It's like they had the big chunk of money, and then they had another big chunk of money. So this is the second
Chunk of money.
And that's something that Kelly at the SAU has taken on, again, speaking to that, looking at a bulk purchase versus me buying these cameras and the middle school buying a certain type of camera, to be able to do a full look at what the district needs, and then make a purchase and go with the right vendor that we know is reliable, because vendor reliability is, I've learned over the years, is pretty important too. If they're going to come out and maintenance things that need to be maintained. So some of the items in the maintenance, I won't go over each single one, but I know obviously the day tank replacement, that's a state requirement for the drinking water. That's a expense that's due, that's a have to, that we have to do. And some of the things, I believe those are probably part of our CIP, like installing the roof, phase 2 of the roof, which has been out there for a long time, so that's just part of the come due. Something new on there, we increased our cost on some of the insect control pieces. I don't know if it's due to weather changing or whatnot, but we've seen an increase in some of just like everyone has at home, flies and that type of stuff, bees coming into the building. So we're trying to get a handle on that and get some better contracts to mitigate some of those routine pest items. And then looking at the elevator maintenance contract, all things considered, increasing it to $5,000 appears to be the best option right now. We priced out what a full replacement cost would be, and I think it was about, was it 150? Somewhere, some six-figure cost for the elevator. So right now, that seems the most prudent way to go is upping the amount for the elevator maintenance contract to be able to come out and adjust things, because we put in various repairs over the years. I think that's about all I have to present for main items. It's quite a bit, but I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Okay, seeing none, thank you. We'll
Great.
move on to the
Thank you.
middle school.
All right. Thank you. So, looking at the new items spreadsheet, under personnel, we're not making any request for new staff for next year. We are asking for 2 stipends. One is the ski club advisor stipend for $1,300. This is a position that's existed for many years. It's been unpaid, and it's been a volunteer. Typically in the past, it's been a parent volunteer. The last few years, we've had a difficult time getting a parent to run it, so we've had a staff member doing it. And typically what we do with clubs is a club will run 1 year, and the advisor will act as a volunteer. If the club is successful and we believe it's going to continue, we'll budget for it the second year, which essentially means the third year the staff member will get paid for being an advisor. That's the situation we're in with Ski Club, that the teacher volunteer has been doing it for the last 2 years, or this will be the second year. So by funding it, they'll get the compensation. It's a position where you have to coordinate with a ski mountain. You have to coordinate busing on a weekly basis. There's a lot of moving parts, so that really deserve the $1,300. And the second one is a stipend for robotics. Our robotics program is just wildly successful here at the middle school. Middle school robotics is a little different than the high school robotics program. Every 15 students that you have participating in robotics, you actually need to start another team. And when you start another team, you need another advisor. So having the one robotics advisor right now is just not enough. The program is successful enough that adding another advisor will allow more kids that want to participate to be able to participate.
So robotics runs year-round?
Well,
Is it, like, what, is there a
it
season
really
to
it does. There
or-
is a season that runs from September to March, but quite honestly,
It's pretty much
if you drive by the school at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, they're here. Whether it's the high school team, the middle school team, in the summer, it pretty much is year round.
Oh, wait, I forgot. So the high school team is still coming down here?
Yes.
Yes.
Forgot about that.
So that's
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
pending the
STEM.
outcome of the STEM warrant.
Yeah. And it's a lot of work for one advisor right now. There's definitely a need to add a second advisor. Right now, there's about 30. Yeah. So there's 2 teams, and essentially one advisor is running both of the teams.
So you really have 3 full teams inside your middle school.
Oh yeah, we could have. This could be just a robotics school.
That's a lot of kids.
So in terms of positions, that's it. I mean, the justification for not adding new staff is, our numbers, we're at 394 right now. Our 8th grade class is huge. It's 220 kids. Our 7th grade class is tiny. It's 174. The 174, which will be our 8th graders next year, it's an anomaly. It's just a blip on the radar. It's the smallest class, K through 12. So our numbers are going to go from 394 to 374. I hesitate to say that because we had 25 new enrollments just in July and August this year. So I'm really planning and anticipating that our enrollment's going to be steady for next year, just given what we've seen. So there's just no need for the addition of
Right,
staff.
and your teams are set curriculum-wise with that.
Yep. And if you looked at,
approach.
we've essentially run 20 classes with 20 less kids. That's 1 less kid per class. It's just, it's very nominal. Any other questions about personnel before we move on?
Just a question. I heard some people in town say that population is going down in the high school, at the school system, and therefore seem to be opposed to drastic increases in budgets. So are you saying that it seems like the biggest contributor to a smallest class, to a smallest population, is the 7th grade class? Is that what you're...
Right now, yeah. So, you'd have to think if we were to make staffing adjustments, which I don't think any are necessary, but if you were to make staffing adjustments based upon this one 7th grade class, next year there's an extra 25 kids in this up and coming 7th grade class. So that one class makes it difficult because it's unlike the sizes. We have some big elementary school classes that are coming up in the next few years. And so, the class of 174, it does lend itself, this 7th grade class, the class sizes are small in comparison to what other class sizes in the district look like. So that's what.
And there's no real explanation to explain why.
No, I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions under personnel? So looking at academics, again, not any major increases. We're looking to add a program called Newsella. This is a reading literacy program. Our teachers have been using this program for a while, but basically they've been burning through these free trials of it. They'll get a 90-day free trial. The English teacher will get a 90-day free trial. Then the social studies will get a 90-day free trial. Well, the free trials have run out, and it's a program that our teachers asked for last year. We didn't end up funding it, but again, this year came back and said we really want that. PSAT, our students participated in the PSAT at the beginning of November. We're looking for another data point. At the elementary school, they have NEWA testing. We don't have NEWA testing at the middle school. I don't feel it to be appropriate. We took on the PSAT this year, thinking it would give students, greater opportunity when they enter into high school and they take the PSAT and the SAT. There is some data to suggest that when kids take PSAT 8-9, which is the test they took in November, they actually perform higher on the PSAT in high school. PSAT also offers kids personalized learning pathways, so they get their scores back. They get a report that tells them what their strengths are, what some of the areas of improvement are needed. When it comes to those areas of improvement, they're literally giving online tutorials through Khan Academy so that they can go and enhance their skill level within a certain area that might be a deficit. So we administered that in November. We actually get the results on Monday. And just find it to be a pretty valuable tool for collecting data without over-testing our kids. The whole test took about 2.5 hours. So, also, we're looking to add Project Lead the Way, which some of you might be familiar with that. It's a STEM-based curriculum. We have it in the elementary grades. We have it at the high school. We don't have it at the middle school. Our middle school computer program, computer class has been a lot of programming. But it's become a little dated. In fact, a lot of the activities that our middle school students have been doing these previous years are now being done at the primary school. And that's just the nature of the world we live in. So Project Lead the Way offers kids very rigorous, very relevant curriculum that aligns with STEM curriculum in the elementary school and STEM curriculum in the high school as well. In terms of instruction, we're also looking for some resources. You may recall last year we added a 0.2 math teacher to the HPMS budget strictly for purposes of acceleration. Well, we added the teacher. We have a class running for acceleration. What we didn't do last year, which we should have done last year, was budgeted for resources. So we're going back and we're going to $4,000 will get us some textbooks for the class, as well as a set of graphing calculators. So that's our total. So the total of $18,100 for academic resources. That's what we would be looking for. Anyone have any questions about academic resources? All right. Next category is new computer equipment. Again, in total, we're looking at about $16,000 worth of increases. As you're probably well aware, I feel like we've done a very good job at the middle school making continuous sort of incremental improvements to technology over the last, 5 to 7 years. We've added Chromebooks every year. We've updated the wireless. We added the IT position. And I just think we're getting to a point of saturation. I really feel with the addition of this Chromebook cart, we're at a place where we want to be. And what I've defined that at the middle school is we want, to have anywhere, anytime access to technology. I don't want every kid to have a device, because I don't want kids on devices all day. And I feel as though when you have a ratio where every 2 classrooms are sharing one Chromebook cart, I feel like that's an effective use of the resources. It allows our kids to have some screen time, but not a lot. And basically, with the addition of the Chromebooks that I'm looking for, we're pretty close. I'll probably come back next year. Well, I won't. The principal next year will come back and ask for one more Chromebook cart. But we've done a nice job incrementally adding technology to the middle school. And I think, we're now going to move from a new request to a replacement cycle. But even that, the Chromebooks hold up very, very well. The school do data that we have indicates that these machines are not being serviced. There's no need for maintenance or service on them.
What is the replacement cycle we're looking at usually? Like, is it a 3 to 5 year?
Well, what I would say is they're so new. So basically, the Chromebooks that we have right now are 5 years old. You would think that we would be coming here and saying we need replacements. We're not. And I think that's where a lot of schools are at. They started putting them into their inventory about 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I know from being involved with the Milford schools that their Chromebooks are 7 years old and they're not replacing them yet either. So they're a quality machine. They're inexpensive. They have high function. The difference between the Chromebooks and the Windows-based machines is Chromebooks here at school, you open them up and they're on. A Windows machine, some of the machines that we have, the Windows machines, they could take you 5 minutes to get on. That has educational impact. The Chromebook's the right device for the school for a number of reasons. So in addition, under new equipment for the middle school, for technology, we're also looking at a couple of document cameras. That would be for the science department. And again, we're looking to do a phased approach with the smart boards. I know the high school has quite a few smart boards. Middle school, we do not. So we've been doing basically 2 a year. We did 2 in 7th grade math 2 years ago. Last year we did 2 in 8th grade math. And next year we're going to start with science. So again, eventually if we do 2 a year, eventually a few years from now we'll be able to say we have smart boards in all the classrooms where they're needed and wanted. Yeah, that's basically it under new technology requests. John?
Are there mobile smart boards that you can?
There are, yeah. We have 2 mobile smart boards right now. Okay. The difficulty with them is just the calibration. The wall-mounted ones are much nicer because they have a wall-mounted projector and they don't need to be calibrated. When a smart board is not wall-mounted, it's not high quality. It doesn't work as well. So it's not. We have them. In fact, I think they were donated by the high school.
I was happy to help.
And I know they were. And I think for that very reason, like they work, but they're not great. It wouldn't be a long-term solution going forward. Yes, yeah. Not as much as the wall-mounted one. So.
Well, maybe one of the elementary schools.
Yeah, we'll pass them down. We'll pass them down. Yeah. Under replacement equipment, I'm going to move through some of these sections a little bit faster. But again, we're on a typical replacement process for staff laptops. We're having a new server, a food service server, some switches. So that there isn't a lot in terms of replacement. So I don't stop me if you have any questions. Also, just moving on to safety, you're going to see that. It's right in 3.1. It says we have $22,000 for cameras. And Kelly, is that accurate? Okay. And based upon the quote. And again, we have added new cameras here at the middle school this past year using the safety and security funds. We did about $40,000 worth of cameras. We're at about 80% saturation with what we have, and I can tell you. These cameras are high tech. I can, view them from my phone. I can open the front door from my phone. I can communicate with the person at the buzzer. I can, look at the label on somebody's shirt. They have that feature. You have to pay a little more for it. So that to me it's money well spent. We've done an amazing job of adding safety and security upgrades to the building. As you're aware, Halls Brookline Middle School is named the 2018. We received the Safe Schools Award from the Department of Homeland Security. And a lot of that is due in part to grants that we've been able to get for security film, controlled access with our key fobs, video camera systems, door jams. When it comes to safety, we're leaders in the state. And the $22,000 that's in there for cameras would round out all of the camera work that we'd have 100% saturation inside and outside of the building.
Does the safety assessment include like the crosswalks across 122?
No,
Okay.
no, it did not.
Is there any concern with safety in terms of like pedestrian access to the school area?
Yeah, I think we made progress. I mean, it took us by some accounts, it took 20 years to get the crosswalk across Main Street. So we have made some improvements out there. And what we do at the beginning of the school year, and then when the warmer weather comes, is we'll go out there and we will teach kids how to use the crosswalk.
I'm never around here during the day.
Yeah.
So do you have cross guard?
We do not. No, we do not.
Is there any concern at all related to that?
Anytime you have a middle schooler crossing a street anywhere in the United States of America, I have concern.
One
Yeah.
thing that comes to mind, like
Yeah.
flashing lights, or
Yep.
like, I've seen back when I was in California, like they'll have light strips on the
Yeah.
crosswalk and you can time them so they only come on certain times.
Yeah, and I would love to see that happen. Just to be honest, it was such an ordeal to get just the white lines painted. I will say, it took 5 years to do that. I am happy to go to bat to get the flashing lights, but just be prepared. It may take another 5 years. There's a lot of resistance to adding those features in the historic district. And we, yep. Yeah, and we have, and it's a state road, and there's some concern about the traffic pattern with the yield there, and I learned a lot about local politics. But I hear you. No, it is a concern. I really,
I mean, I'm not pushing for anything per se. I just know that when I drive around here, even when there's no traffic, it's a complicated intersection. And then there's a crosswalk, and then there's kids, and then it's busy. It's a busy thoroughfare. So it just seems like.
I can tell you from having driven up and down 122 over the last 9 or 10 years that crosswalks made a tremendous difference, especially in the dark. Once kids started using it properly, there were many, many times prior to that crosswalk where a kid would be crossing in front of one of the buildings, that little triangle out there, and it was just very precarious. So a lot of the kids are using the crosswalk, and people are used to its presence and are slowing and stopping like they're supposed to. So it's been a huge upgrade.
I prefer to be data-driven, so if there's not data that shows there's a problem, then that's fine.
Yeah.
But the problem with these kind of situations is the data is usually somebody getting hit.
Not good.
well, and that's how we got the crosswalk. Yeah, we did.
Data shows
Yeah.
that we
Right.
need something more.
Yeah, that we had a kid that got hit by a car. Luckily, he was not injured, but it was a kid hit by a car, and and it was a little bit of the fault of the motorist and a little bit of the fault of the kid not paying attention. And you add those two together, and
I have a question regarding the security system.
yeah.
For you to qualify for the state grant, do they do an inspection? Do they have to, like I say,
Yes.
specifications that require you to
There
set
are.
up the system in a certain way?
Yes. So there are certain standards that you have to achieve. One is you have to have a NIMS certification, which is a national certification that your school has, undergone certain safety specifications, what the schools in Halls and Brookline have done. You also need to have had a safety inspection or a safety assessment by the Department of Homeland Security within the last 3 years, which again, all of the schools in Hollis have done that. And then this last round of funds, if you had achieved those two standards and you are asking for a reasonable amount of money for legitimate safety issues, most of the schools in the state received funds. We've received grants in the past from Homeland Security, and many of them there was a lot more hoops to jump through. This grant that we did, it took a couple of hours to fill out compared to some of the past that were much more difficult.
I'm trying to understand how good of a quality of a camera system you're installing, and that's basically what's driving how easy it is to get the funds. In other words, do they basically say we want to be able to have a certain resolution at a certain distance?
No.
Do we need so many cameras per square footage? That sort of thing.
No, not for this last grant.
Okay.
Now I've heard there's more grant money coming, you know, in the specifications or the qualifications may change. But in the past, what you're describing, yes, when we did the controlled access in the building, the key fob system, they were very particular about what system we were using. And, you know, we literally had photographic evidence of before, during construction, after construction. But this last grant, my impression of it was, this was Homeland Security and the Department of Education wanting to get money into the hands of school systems quickly. So they made the qualifiers for this grant very easy. And that was why we were able to get the funds.
So I'm just confused by the notes that are underneath it. So for the high school, it says it's $20,000, but the total cost is 82, so 62 is covered by the grant?
No, actually what this means is we don't know if we're going to get this grant or not.
Okay.
And the high school desperately needs cameras.
Okay.
So the total cost to put the cameras in the high school as needed is $82,000.
Okay.
We have a commitment of 20% of that. So 20% of that would come out of that $20,000. If we weren't getting the grant, then we would take that $20,000 and do a phase 1 of probably 4 phases to
Okay.
get to what the
Okay,
quote
so
indicates.
so then for using that logic for the middle school would not need that phased approach. So I don't know. So what does the note mean?
So
The total cost is
that's what they have left to do. So if the grant is not approved, then we would complete their project with that amount.
oh, okay, okay,
And if it
okay.
is approved, that's where the 20% would come from.
So is there a phased approach to the middle school?
No, because this would complete their project completely. So that's they've already done phase 1.
Okay, so where does the 20% come in for the middle school?
It would be in that 22,193. If they get the grant, it would come out of that. If we don't get the grant, that finishes the project.
I
So
guess
wait
it-
a minute, is the grant going to cover 20% of the 22?
No, the grant will cover 80% of the 22.
And so we're budgeting for the 22 in the eventual, assuming we're not getting the grant, as opposed to budgeting $5,000.
Yes, because we'd like to finish this project.
Okay.
If we
So
don't
when
get the
would you
grant.
know about the grant?
I'm sorry, what?
When would you know about the grant?
That would be a great question to have an answer to. I don't have a clue.
Would that be sometime in the next 2-3 months? I mean, a couple of months, or?
I have no idea.
You could expect the worst and hope for the best.
Yes,
With that.
yes.
Finish
yes.
it, which is
Absolutely.
about, I think, 80%
Yes.
covered.
Yeah, that's
And the
a
high
rough
school
number, but
is-
Not
It's
80%.
nothing.
No, but, okay.
We have coverage, but it's not 80%.
Or 50% or 80%.
The 82 is gonna be 100%, and then, so we're splitting that into 4 phases if
Well,
we
the
don't
82 is
get.
100% for both schools?
No,
No,
just
just
for
for high
this.
school.
So in previous grants that have been given to the school, when do they typically happen in the year? Is there a particular time?
No, this
Depends.
is the wild, wild west.
This is,
So-
okay.
So if the $20,000 for the high school is approved and you get the grant, would you do $20,000 plus what the grant would cover?
No, we could probably shift that into another need.
And you will tell us at the next budget
Okay.
meeting, whenever that happens.
If we know, see, that's why we're budgeting this way, because we may not know.
And I would say too, you know, because I have pretty ongoing conversations with people at Homeland Security. Before this last grant came out, there was talk for months. There's a big grant coming, you know, and we're like, okay, when's it coming? I'm not hearing any talk of another one coming. I know that they've said at some point there'll be more money, but there's not a lot of conversation right now that it's happening anytime soon. So
Because of the school issues that have happened. So you said they just kind of want to get money out to schools so they can't be.
they will tell you every time there's a school shooting, you're going to see grant money coming your way. That's just the reality of things. Yep, that's
You got lucky with it, but okay.
yeah.
But it could be
Yeah,
or more.
yeah.
So just to summarize, if you get grant money, the amount that you need is X. If you don't get it, is Y. What is the bottom line of both situations?
Well, in order to do the whole project, to do 100% saturation in the middle school, inside, outside, we need $22,000. I just want $22,000. I don't care who gives it to me.
For this budget cycle?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the high school is about how much for,
82 total.
82.
Yeah.
so for both schools, about 100,000.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
82 is not in this. The only
That would be
20
over
is,
4
it's like a
years.
4-year approach.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Right, instead of asking for the 82,000 in case we don't get the grant, we're gonna make that 4 phases, and this would be phase 1,
4 years?
yes.
So the good news,
Bob, middle school gets finished.
He's got a good system. I don't know, you
Yeah.
got it for him, but.
Well,
he's on the phone all
I have a
the time.
theory, but no.
Well, my concern is, why are we waiting 4 years to make the school safe?
Because we assumed that the budget committee wouldn't like me putting $82,000 in there.
The budget committee probably like you put 5,000 in there, but it's reality things that should happen. If something
Sure.
happens next year at the school and it wasn't covered because we didn't put the cameras into the system.
Absolutely, I'm happy to change that. And
Maybe we should have a sidebar to discuss the specifics of this plan, because I'm interested, for example, on what kind of cameras, what kind of system, how many they're going, how it's gonna work. And if you're saying only 1/4 of the total, what is the gap that you're basically, even though you don't wanna advertise it, but what is the gap that you're creating as a result of not doing all of it, you know?
Yeah,
I wanna understand a little more, you know,
Yeah.
that's all.
yeah.
I think that's a good idea, have a sidebar.
I also, just to follow up on your response to Darlene's question, if we did get the funding, then wouldn't we just double up 1 year and do 2/5 instead of put it to
Well,
another?
if we do get the funding, the whole system will be taken care of at that time. So I don't need
So
any
you're
more
applying
money.
for the high school for the full system?
Yes, that 82 is the entire,
High school
Okay.
system.
yes.
I'm sure, so you
And
requested,
so how much of that 82
20%.
is in the budget that's
Oh,
proposed?
well, well, you can't look at it that way, exactly, because we need, our part of that is 20%. So of the 82,000, we are required to supply 20%.
So that would
of
be,
82.
so the 20 would be like 16.5, but you're using $20,000 saying we're going to do it regardless
Yes,
of getting it or not.
that is correct. We are going to do phase 1, no matter what, and hopefully we're doing the whole thing, if the state will approve the grant.
So for the high school, if the state approves the grant,
I
the
see,
20
okay, I missed that.
20,000 is over budgeted by $3,000 to $4,000 or whatever. Okay.
so as far as getting the grant from the state, you have to do it in fourths rather than
No.
all
No.
at once?
No.
You're
That
gonna
is
get the whole
just-
amount?
that is
That's a
just
contingent,
Plan
this
B.
is a contingency plan, yeah.
Plan A is the government giving you everything you need to
Okay.
make the high school.
And I just want to make it clear, we have cameras in the high school. There's not as many cameras as I would like.
And they're not very high
Yeah.
quality.
We're talking about 100%, right, good
Yeah.
quality, 100% saturation, that, you know, and it's, I mean, I'm not trying to.
The other-
But waiting 5 years for 100% building.
The other good news, too, is in the cameras, there's different arguments about the cameras in terms of, are they more of a reactive device or are they more of a preventive device? I could make an argument both ways. For the worst case scenario, someone's going to come in, they're going to come in, they're reactive. I hate to say it, but that's the reality. The good side of the, in terms of the camera piece is with the students paying for their parking, anything that goes outside is related to parking, and those funds could be just fully funded outside the building, because we also have to be concerned with the school grounds as well, because we have any number of activities going on at any given time. So when we go to replace the outdoor cameras, we'd be looking to use the parking funds, which is, replenished with student, use fees.
And I think it's important too. The reason why we focus, I mean, there are security items. If you look at the report, there are a lot of security items in there that that need our attention. Some that are budget related, some not. The reason for the cameras was the police department wants the ability to be able to view the cameras in the event that there's a situation here at school and they need to access that camera footage outside of the building. They can't do that with the analog cameras that we had before. These new cameras are IP-based, so they're cloud-based, internet-based, and it allows them the ability to do that. That, to me, was the driver of a lot of the need for the cameras, and something that Homeland Security was like, yes, your police department needs to be able to see these cameras. And
By the way, those cameras are like little computers, and they could be corrupted and attacked, just like with.
Interesting that you say that, because the company that we contracted with had some concerns about the cameras that we had in regards to that.
Right.
So the cameras that we did have here before were susceptible to that. in comparison to the cameras that we have now.
Once they're corrupted, you have to reset them, and it's complicated.
Yeah, I bet.
And just to note that we've applied the same approach to all of the schools in HB. So they all had this assessment. They all have grant applications. We have done the budgeting in all of them this way.
There's the same camera systems?
Yes,
For
same
all
camera
schools.
systems.
Same company.
Like you said, all the first responders will have access, whether it's through a phone app that they have or,
Yep.
or something that.
And they have access. The Halls Police Department has
Okay,
access
It's
to
not
the
like they have to
system.
come in the building to go to a central spot, they get access.
No, yeah, they don't need to do that now.
Okay, thanks.
Too bad that they really consider this a thing that in-depth of it.
Yeah.
State work.
Yep.
I'm very concerned with the 5-year plan.
Are they
So noted.
tied into the cop sync at all?
No, no.
Okay, I think we can move on. Thank you.
Real quickly, just going through facilities and maintenance. A lot of these items I know Kelly has talked to you about before. The day tank, the new requirement by the state for the drinking water testing, elevator service. Some of our elevators are old. We just replaced the cable. We're hearing good news about that, and that we should get at least 5 years out of that. NPR tables and chairs. This is, again, I'm a big fan of the phased approach, but our current tables in there is about 25 of them. There's 200 chairs. The tables are getting old. And if we replace a few a year, I'm not going to come and ask for $30,000 to $40,000 to replace all of them. But you're going to see year after year, we're going to ask for $5,000. We got the new table out there now. It's great. Our regular tables fold down, and then you got to unload 8 chairs around that. And with the facility study that we just had done, the person conducting the study was like, this is the most archaic way to set up your cafeteria, and said the amount of time and money that in manpower that you're going to save by getting the tables we did, he's like, you'll save that money in a few short years. So, we're going to continue with that replacement. Same with the, just to jump down to the tile floor in room 103, the north end of the building, the original section of the building, some of the tiling in that area of the building is from the 60s when the building was built. And we really could retile most of the north end. But again, we're going to use the phased approach. Last year we did 1 classroom. This next summer we'll do 1 classroom. We'll put in for 1 classroom. The only thing I see interrupting that phased approach is if robotics leaves, that floor is going to need to be done right away. It's in terrible shape, and it's a very large floor. But again, 5 years from now, we'll have brand new tile in the north end because we did 1 or 2 classrooms each year. And then the only other new item on here is the ductless heat pump in the art room. The ventilation in the art room is not good. I have some concerns from a health standpoint with that. And adding this system to me is, for me, it would be a little bit of a non-negotiable. I'd really like to see that go through there. And I'll entertain any questions about maintenance facilities or anything else. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's not. Does not contain asbestos. Yeah. No, it's old. Yeah.
Great. Well, seeing none, thank you again both so much. I say this is my, you guys know what I'm going to say next. There's not one request here that we, can't, we understand that you bring us and you are really thoughtful on what you bring forward. And I don't think one thing that we heard tonight that we couldn't go, so I really do appreciate you taking the time to come talk with us, help us understand things a little bit better. And, again, appreciate everything you both do every day. I just so impressed by, the staff, the students, and the programs and things that you support and do on a daily basis. It's really outstanding.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Would somebody talk about a sidebar or social security, maybe something that we're going to pursue?
Yeah, we can get some additional information. I'll talk to Kelly about how we.
Programs will come through and they're going to be great.
Yeah, I'll follow up with Kelly about that. Okay, so thank you. I don't want to hold you any longer. We're going to continue talking about some things, so you're welcome to stay, but I know you have families. So.
I'll watch them all.
Yeah. Or not.
Yeah, or not. I don't know. Yeah. As long as you're not tracking that.
Having a meeting before Christmas or the next meeting in January?
We'll get to that.
Yeah, be careful. There are.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays. Thank you
Yes,
so much.
very good. It really just restates in a different format the things that are in the new items section of the budget trend file. But again, this expands and gives us that outer year view and just kind of sees where, how things are falling into place. So, so we're looking at 2020. 300, and so everything listed for 2020 is included between budget line items, the new items section. It's all included in our current view that we have.
And I will say there was one thing that Bob missed, not his fault, it was farther down in the document, and that's the fire panel replacement for the middle school. That's one of those must-dos, and we've got that as a funding source, the maintenance trust.
Oh, okay.
So that's 60K that can come out of the budget.
And
No, out of
Yeah.
the maintenance.
no, the
trust.
maintenance trust, and we have 120
Well,
in there.
yes, until
It-
that wiring thing he said about the elevator, we're using
Right.
the trust for that, because that was completely unexpected.
Okay, so we had 80. We went through the last budget cycle, and we put 40 in
Yes,
March.
yes.
So we're
we
at
started
120
at
for the year.
120, and then I believe the cable is,
Okay,
I want to say it's 15,000.
okay.
So we really have 105,
105 plus 60.
roughly. I mean,
Mm-hmm. So that's 45. Okay. Okay. Right, phase 2 of the roof. Okay. Oh. There might be some shift with that security camera money in 21. Can't believe we're talking about
Yes,
20 and
that's,
21.
that's a
But, okay,
possibility,
just-
yes.
So this is just another, gives us a little bit more detail about, again, those outer years. So take a look. If you have any other questions, we can follow up with Kelly.
And I will say that FY '21 looks heavy on the cost, because I'm clearly not able to do everything we had in
Yeah,
FY
like
'20.
the water system study, the egress,
Right,
those have been moving
shifted,
for like
yeah.
3
Yes,
years. And paving, so HBS paving the following year would be the dirt lots.
For the high school?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's primarily focused on the upper lot.
Oh, the upper lot.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
And there's some offset to some of the paving through parking fees and things like that, or lighting.
There can be, I mean, he
but-
does use that for some other things that are
Yeah.
related to the parking lots, but there should always be some amount of money available.
Okay, so one thing I wanted to just bring up, at the Hollis Budget Committee meeting, there just had an overview of the roads and the quality of the roads and the work in the town. And one of the things that came up that I didn't think about was that Drury Lane down by the elementary schools and Cavalier Court are not town-maintained roads from a paving perspective. So they're considered a private road?
They're
Or,
considered part of the school district.
okay,
Long driveway.
Like-
yes.
Very
So,
long driveway.
and I don't recall, I'll have to pull, I don't recall, I'm gonna see if I have the road study with me. But in any event, the town isn't going to maintain it, but they did evaluate it.
Yes,
in the study that they did. Let me just see if I happen to have it. Oh, I do. And so I'm just trying to think. I just feel like Cavalier Court.
Like one of the worst roads
Yeah, it
in
was
the
not.
whole
It was not.
city.
Yeah, here it is. It would have had a priority of 2. So they prioritized every road in the town for what needed attention next, and in what.
This is part of their 10-year plan or of the town?
Yes. So and it's part of an update from the NRPC, the National Regional Planning Commission. And so I noticed that Cavalier Court was a 2. So that would be something they would want to, if the town were addressing it, they would be addressing it within the next 2 years.
Right.
Well, after, in 2 years.
Yep.
And so it just made me think that it's something we've probably never paid attention
No,
to.
it's not on our radar.
At all. So maybe it needs to be somewhere on the radar.
I agree.
At some point, just to add a little, over 20,000 at the end and prioritize maybe out here somewhere.
Well-
But just add it to the, because it is something we just, I would have no idea what what would need to be done, what the
Right.
paving costs.
Well, in addition to that, there's also that issue of egress
Yes,
as well.
and so that would probably become part
Yes,
of that
and our
whole
plan
discussion.
Is to hook up with the National Regional Planning Center at some
Oh,
point
great.
here in the future and have them do a study
Oh, great.
on egress/paving.
Will they do that for free?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I was just wondering. I just thought I'd ask. Okay. So I'm glad that that's on your radar, but I
Yeah,
did
that
want to.
is, but the paving wasn't, so I'll
Yeah,
roll
I
that
just
in
wanted to
together.
bring that up because I kind of sat there and went,
I
oh,
did too when I
oh
saw
boy,
that, yeah.
that's nice that they've evaluated the quality of it and we'll be responsible for it as a school district. So I'll just put that out there.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so this thing that we're looking at,
The-
what I'm looking at now anyways, improvement plan, is this, I guess I'm just wondering how to interpret this. So like, what was I just looking at? Alarm system.
Mhm.
So we've got the plan is to potentially budget for and spend 3,500 2021. Is there another list for repairs and this is just for upgrades or improvement? Or if something's on this list, like in 2019, is that because it's broken and not working?
No, 2019 means we're fixing it this year.
Right, but I mean,
It could be any of the
both.
things that
It
you
could
said.
be
All of those things?
repairs,
Okay.
or it would be repairs that are sort of outside of the budget. Maybe they're major repairs. Maybe we're really behind in doing some particular aspect of that's listed. So it's to bring it up to where we should be, or
it's like alarm systems. Just looking at this, I don't know if that means it's broken now. We're not going to
no,
fix it.
it's
till
not broken.
2021.
I believe, and I don't remember all these all the time, but I believe there's an upgrade involved there. I believe it could run better than it runs now.
Sure, okay.
There are issues with it. It still works, but there
Okay.
are things we could do to make it better.
Yeah, I would just suggest maybe next time we put a list like this together, we indicate whether either it's broken or it's an upgrade or something like that.
Well, this is a follow-up from a facility audit overview we had back in June where we get a little bit more detail about what those changes are. So this is intended to just be the quick summary. The audit would be the master
okay.
list that prioritizes for the reasons
Right.
that you just said.
So this is both a roadmap and what's being done now,
Yes, it is.
right?
Yeah,
So-
well, yeah, FY19 represents what we're doing this year.
And the
FY20
20
represents what's in the budget.
So-
And the other 3 years represent what still needs to be done and how we are trying to
So what's
prioritize.
2020 is in the budget right now.
That is correct.
So if we were to, for example, ultimately adjust the budget guidance to something smaller,
Mhm.
I would look at this and say, okay, what is really necessary or must be done now versus what may be nice to have, even though it's
Well, I
important.
think we've already done that, really.
Okay.
So these are down to the must-haves, really.
Okay, all right.
Because there were more numbers in there, but if you look on the new item spreadsheet
Yeah,
and
yeah.
maintenance.
Yeah, I saw the progression there,
Right, so
right?
I think we've already done that nice-to-haves.
Okay.
And really, they're not nice-to-haves because we had intended them to be must-haves.
Okay.
but-
So Kelly, I may be getting too far in the weeds, but Bob was talking about doing the tile in room 103, which I think
Yes.
is in his budget this year.
Yes.
Is that on this list?
Yes,
Yes.
that tile flooring about, I don't know, 10 down
From the top.
over to 2020 at 3,000.
Oh, yeah. 3,000?
3,000.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Hopefully that matches.
So these, all the 2020 items on here are in the budget that's
That's
been
correct.
presented?
That is
That's
correct,
correct.
unless I've
Okay,
screwed
great.
something up, yes.
So I guess if we wanna look for ways to reduce some costs, then we're gonna have to look at next year's. That's where the big,
2021?
yeah, that's where the big jump is, right?
Well, that's primarily because I've shifted many of the things from FY20
Yeah, that's
over
okay.
to FY20.
Just like the federal government, we can keep shifting, right?
We have been doing that for many years.
All right.
Is it supposed to be the
Sorry to
total
delay
for
this.
this whole
No,
2020?
just for the over
Just the,
20,000. Oh, you mean this right here?
yeah, for this 2830, is that supposed to be the total from that whole column on both sides?
Well, you would think
Because
it
that's not the,
should.
yeah, 'cause that's not the right number.
Okay, all right.
I
I'll
That's
have to
way
check
format.
that.
Oh,
That's way off.
Corporations.
Oh,
So-
yes, you're right, that is, okay.
You're, yeah, at the
Where are
risk
we?
of, the risk of getting way too far in the weeds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keep
So,
digging.
Yeah.
It doesn't have
2019,
Oh,
at the
yeah, no.
restroom counters, I
Oh,
got a $15,000
you're right.
budget, that number's not
which was
that.
funded
Oh.
and done, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, has that line item in the budget been reduced, in the budget we're talking about now, been reduced by 15,000?
Well, how I do these, everything on this sheet right here, well, there's a couple different account numbers. There's a blob, anything to do with the computers goes into certain account numbers. And then everything else on this sheet goes into one line item. And that line item represents all of these things. That way, we're not falsely increasing line items due to the costs that are one-time new item type things. And that way you guys all can evaluate what they are as new items. So I pull those all out, well, not really pull them out, they never were in there to begin with. And then I will put them in the functions, which is what the DRA wants us to separate things by.
So the total of the new round column of $529, or say $530,000 there equates to the new items line of 415, and the difference is, like you said, in the replacement computers that are other
Right.
places in the budget.
So,
And within then, that 415 is going to be the subtotal of
Yes.
this FY20.
right. I
Does
know
that help?
I know that's really confusing. So that $15,000 has never been in a line item. A normal line item.
Which 15?
The restroom countertops, I'm using
Oh, okay.
that as an example.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
it must have been last year.
No, it was in the new items line.
But if we were to look at the budget for this year, that new items line is now,
Has been
has been
distributed
distributed.
to another new items line for facilities, right? So I don't ever mix these things in the new items into regular line items, because those should be standard
Okay. all
budgeted
right, good.
items every year.
All
Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. I'm jumping around a little bit on the agenda. The next item I have is the SAU budget, but I think I'd like to go back and just talk a little bit about some of the different items in the budget,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Sure.
To just get some clarity on a few items.
Okay.
So, and this is related, again, jumping around the agenda, to probably the school board update that John would give regarding bonded costs for the new project, which we can talk about. But something I just noticed in looking at the budget today, was that the bond cost that we have in here
Yep,
is currently flat.
right, and if you notice at the very bottom, I have estimated additional because we don't know what that's going to be.
Okay, so,
It's not factored
Where
into
did-
anything. It's like right at the very bottom. But it's
So-
not really factored into anything. You are absolutely right.
okay, so I guess okay, so, why am I not seeing that extra summary? Is that on a different?
It should be on the very last, at the very, very end.
I'm at the bottom. The last page of the,
This is the
oh, that
superintendent's
page
view.
of the superintendent's view.
Sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just didn't know where we exactly were. Round 3. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, so, all right, there we go. I'm sorry, so can you just show me where that extra line is? I have the section, so where's the line that's the extra for the bond?
Yeah, it's just shown here, but you know, the number is not accurate at all because we don't know what
Okay, so rather than put a placeholder in the budget equal to the approved article from last year, so if I'm looking at the budget trend file of total of, sorry, let me just get there.
So basically, there needs to be another increased amount.
Yep.
absolutely there does, but
So that needs to be added to the whatever total that is.
you're absolutely right, but I have no idea.
Oh, right. So we're at so if we were to look at the budget trend file of 24,351, that's missing $186,000 to $200,000 of additional bond cost.
Correct.
Okay. I would ask for the next view, since we now know what the funding is going to be, that be put in because it's probably closer to 200,000, I think.
Absolutely. That was my plan.
I would request in future, hopefully we don't have this issue again, where we get, where the funding gets pushed and we don't know where we are. But I think it would have been important to have a placeholder in the actual budget itself and not added to the bottom because we knew it was coming.
Sure.
But I know that
But it could have been a
it
much
could have been,
smaller number too, just based on the timing of everything as well.
yeah, but I was surprised that the 200,000 wasn't there. Just no, just because again, it was known kind of prior to the cycle that we were going to be doing something, and we could have at least put in the 2.5% placeholder with something, and I think it would have been helpful. But
So if we stick to the previous budget guidance, there's going to have to be 200.
it has to be adjusted.
Right?
Yes, that's exactly what that would mean. So, I don't know if anyone else in reviewing the budget had any items of note, concern. If you'd like to hold your questions for another view, and we can just focus more on guidance tonight. But that was just that one thing I just wanted to mention. So, okay. We'll just get all the budget items out on the table. I'll jump to the SAU budget. I sent everybody a copy of the most current view that we reviewed, and Bob alluded to earlier a change in the organizational level at the SAU office that's leading to a change from the view that I previously shared with you. So there's going to Andy has
Made some promotions.
made
right.
some promotions, and we now have a third assistant superintendent, and that's Amy Rowe for special service, student services. And he's identified Bob as her replacement because she's unfortunately tendered her resignation from that role at the end of this school year. So she, as Kelly put it in our meeting, has generously agreed to remain with the district for an additional year to share her experience, and I just don't even know how you do a data dump that large, even to someone as qualified as Bob is, to transition the program. And I think there are so many nuances, legalities, and just projects and things that are in place for student services. It's an absolute asset to and from my opinion, for the organization as a whole to have both Amy and Bob working together through the transition. So I guess Bob will be kind of working with Amy even starting now.
Right.
And Amy will be continuing at a lower salary level for the FY20 school year. So what that means to the SAU budget is an increase. We were originally at around 4.9 to 5%. It's now a 7% increase, due predominantly to that one-time change to the salary requirements.
I just have a math question.
Sure.
I got 9.5%. $148,000 increase on 1.7 million. I mean 1.5 million.
It is not an increase to. It's only an increase of the half salary for Amy next year. Bob and Amy's salary is essentially equivalent. So the increase in the SAU budget is for Amy to stay at half salary for the extra year.
I thought the increase in the budget was 148.
Let me take a look.
Well,
Is
that gets more complicated because the school board approved $24,000, well, almost $25,000 to the FY19 budget through the use of fund balance. So that $148,000 is using the original budget number, I'm sure, but using the number that the 1.6 is what they've approved now. So that's where I believe you're getting the 7%.
Well, but the revenue aside, the expense has gone up 148, right?
From the last view?
From the original budget. And
Okay, from the original budget view, not view over view from
Not
the
real
5.
budget.
What? Sorry. So from the it isn't up 148,000 from the last view I shared. It's up. You're saying it's up 148 from the current budget we're in right now.
Right, the real.
From yes,
The real
yes,
one.
yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
So
The operating budget, I guess, right?
no. Well, the SAU budget.
Right.
You're
Right.
looking on this sheet, I think.
Right.
It's up. I have a net of 116,000.
So he's looking on this sheet.
Oh,
Down
sorry.
here. And that's the.
Well, I looked at it. I thought I confirmed it by looking at the other page, but go ahead.
Okay,
Well,
sorry.
Again, it's the original budget that was approved was 1.577 last
Right.
year. But the school board has approved an additional almost $25,000 to use to increase that budget. And that's why this looks different than this because of that. So, but if you're comparing what was approved.
Well, I mean, we had a budget for the SAU
Mhm.
that was approved,
Mhm.
and then the school board or the SAU board added to that from the reserve.
Mhm.
How can we do that?
I don't know if that's what,
I mean, the voters approved a budget number, which I
They
think
did.
was
the 1.577.
right. That's what the voters approved. So how can we spend more than that?
The governing board voted to do so out of fund balance.
But I don't think they can they?
No, you can't. You can't vote. You can't overspend the budget.
No, not at the SAU.
You can have an unreserved fund balance that you can draw funds from, but you can't exceed an approved budget.
Well,
Yes.
we'll have to discuss that with our
Yeah.
governing board then, because
I was there.
Okay, Matt, help us out.
So I'm trying to remember, I know we increased the numbers. I was gonna go pull up the minutes just to see what they said.
Because we can take the approved amount and agree to use fund balance to offset it. And we had one instance in the past where the governing board did overspend the budget, and there was some documentation that needed to go to the Board of Education and the DOE and everything.
Yeah, there's a process.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And if I remember that correctly, that is because we overspent without the approval of the school board, and that's why.
No,
that
they actually
documentation-
approved it.
Yeah, they were part of the
No.
process early on.
They didn't approve that. I remember that very specifically because they said in their meeting, oh, this is something that we should have formally approved.
Oh, okay, okay,
And they did not.
okay,
So that whole process was because they never approved it.
okay.
So I
So,
believe everyone's operating under the idea that they can use fund balance
To add to the budget.
to approve these additional expenses.
Okay.
That
That's
doesn't
what they
sound right.
voted, that's what they voted to do in their,
We need to have zero fund balances then.
Then,
I
right,
mean, from a taxpayer's perspective, we need to have no fund balance, if that is actually being done.
I will, oh, that's how you get your 9 and then the 9, and now I
Right,
see the
that's
9 and a
what it
half,
is.
okay. Hold on a second, 15, 60, so,
We go back and find out if that's actually what county improved
well,
further,
well, now I'm,
if the thousands of people all might be.
so the
That guy,
1567
there was one guy
here,
watching, he already fell asleep.
on this total, so that does not include, that's the original budget,
yes.
okay.
Well, it's 1577 and then there's revenue involved.
Right, okay. And then the view we have here, oh, I see, it's with that additional 23,770. It's the last line of the budget. Board approved benefits, okay, I see it.
So it should have been a 54,202.
Between
Well,
2
is what-
years,
well,
or,
that's what was approved for Amy. And then
that's
and-
going into FY '20.
Yes.
We're
Right.
talking about the level, the
Oh,
starting
right.
point for
Oh,
FY
in
'19.
June.
Okay.
Okay, I was saying 48, but it's 54, okay, for Amy. The issue is the starting point for the of the comparison point to the FY '19 budget. The 1602 is higher than the 1578
Yeah.
because of the board-approved use of unreserved fund balance for the additional benefits that were
Yes.
the board authorized. Okay. I'll do some follow-up on that, and just to make sure we're all kind of on the same page with that action and how it plays out.
Yeah. thank
it's
you.
almost like, sounds like before you make a major move of staffing like this, there should be a side analysis of the budget impact and maybe come up with an approach to pay for it.
Well, that was discussed at the SAU Budget Committee meeting, and the SAU Governing Board does hold an unreserved fund balance, and, you know, as towns look to keep that unreserved fund balance at a certain level, so too does the Governing Board, and right now that 7 to 10% range is down to 5%, so to cover the expense of that 1-year blip, we're not considering using the unreserved fund balance because, well, first of all, it isn't enough to cover. Oh, it would be enough actually to cover. I was looking at the wrong number, but they're looking to keep that it's already at less than the target range, so they didn't want to use the unreserved fund balance for that reason. It's there. It can be a decision of the governing board to use that and modify the funding of the budget.
Yeah, 'cause I know
If
that.
that's, and I can bring that feedback to the next, do we have another meeting scheduled?
The next one is, for the subcommittee? No, I don't.
Okay, I'll provide the feedback directly to the members if that's the position of our budget committee, to use some of the unreserved fund balance to offset and mitigate some of that cost.
I'm not sure I know what you're asking.
I'm asking if you would like me to take that recommendation and provide that to Kelly and the SAU Budget Committee, because right now there's no meeting scheduled, but the public hearing on the SAU budget is scheduled for December 13th, and that's when the governing board will decide on the budget and what's going to be put into the warrants. So there'll be a public hearing at their next meeting on the 13th. So the organizational change happened after the SAU Budget Committee had their last meeting. So we're left with going back to individually canvassing our boards and providing that feedback back, or requesting another meeting sometime before the 13th.
Can I just make sure I understand the
Sure.
I'm following?
Okay.
So for this year, it's that 23,000 is coming out of the unreserved fund balance.
Okay, what, 23,000 are we talking about? I just want to be sure.
The 25,000.
23,770 in the last line. Is that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the fiscal year 19 board approved benefits.
Yes.
Okay. And then for 2020 school year, the coverage for Amy's position is budgeted in.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But
To the FY20 SAU budget.
okay, but what you're suggesting is that you're asking whether we would prefer to have that come out of that reserve fund balance instead.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Sorry, I'm just not.
Well, it could be for a couple of reasons. It could be to mitigate the impact of the increase to the taxpayer.
Okay.
We could say, well, kind of for the reason that kind of the conversation we were having about voting amendments to a budget afterward. Why does an SAU need an unreserved fund balance? So is that a recommendation we would make, and we would like you to spend it down below the target that you've set? So those are, a couple of the reasons.
Okay.
It's
So
a
they're
one.
more of the higher
It's
level.
it's a one-time expense. So do we take a one-time impact by using the unreserved fund balance?
But there would be a second time because we would be doing it 2 years in a row. No, this year
Well,
it's coming out.
if it's
Well-
approved, yeah.
This year it's coming out of the unreserved fund balance.
This year that we're in now.
Next year it's
Comes out of the
proposed to be-
SAU
No,
budget.
but they're for two different
They are for
reasons.
2 different reasons.
Right. So for Amy's position,
That's right.
it's for FY20. The other issue is the additional 24,000 approved from this year's budget based on the governing board decisions that are for different things.
Okay. So, yeah, so because I know when we were I was in that, at least the first committee meeting, we talked about the fact that we were getting below target and that we would naturally let it,
Mm-hmm.
approach target again.
Right.
But if we're then saying next year we'll cover Amy's position out of the unreserved fund balance, then we're obviously either delaying, if not draining,
Mm-hmm.
the unreserved fund balance. So now I understand what you're saying philosophically. Where do we want the unreserved fund balance, or? Okay.
Let me just say
There should be, what was it, 5% that we try to keep for the SAU?
7 to 10.
Seven
So
to
it's
10.
10,
So
and it's down to 5.
Yeah.
percent, we're down to 5.
Yeah.
That type of fund balance isn't something that can be returned to taxpayers like the school districts. At the SAU level, what's there has to stay there.
Or be
Or,
spent.
we can't return it to offset taxes,
this
but we
is-
can use it to spend money, so we don't have to.
Right. So, and thus you then try to keep the target a little lower than you would in the district budget.
And for the
We don't
SAU
have a
to-
target for an unreserved fund balance. Well,
They go up.
yeah, well,
what we return to taxpayers. Is
Yeah,
our
is,
target.
and it's far lower than 5 to 7% for the
Right,
co-op.
definitely.
Mhm.
But for the SAU, the unreserved fund balance is our only source for emergency expenditures. For instance, if the furnace went out, this is the only source we have
Wow.
to go to.
So I guess I'm a
Well,
little
that's,
bit,
but the Hollis School District owns the building, right? So if,
Well,
that was just maybe not the best example, yeah, just, all right, but, okay.
So how much is in the SAU unreserved fund balance at the moment? Dollar amounts?
85,500.
and why does it need to be there? I mean, what's an SAU emergency? Aren't they all
The
kicked out to the districts?
superintendent is in the hospital and we have to hire an interim superintendent for 6 months. That won't cover that.
Yeah, that's happened. Well, not that specific, but we have had an interim
Yeah,
superintendent.
okay, all right.
Mhm.
Well, I guess my concern is just, if the governing board decides to go into the, fund balance to cover an emergency, I don't think it's fair to tell taxpayers that that's what the budget, that then the next year, that's the base of the next year's budget, because they didn't approve that budget.
Well, and that's why what you see here is where you're getting your 9%.
Well, I
And,
know, but
and
when
we put it here, it's on there as well. We, so you can see it.
I'm trying to answer Darlene's question.
Okay.
So, for the SAU presentation, the taxpayers need to know that it's a 9.5% increase. It's
Okay.
not a 7.5%
Okay.
increase.
Fair enough.
And it's based on the fact that
Fair
the
enough.
SAU board overspent its budget.
As a result of whatever happened.
Yeah, I mean, justified or not, that's the facts that, I don't think it's fair to just say, gee, our budget was, the 16.
I mean, I think it's insightful to have a reason why this happened and the fact that the process was broken. Not it's just the amounts, but it is the actual that was done.
Is anyone aware of the last time or has it happened that the SAU has well, I mean, obviously this time now they've gone into the unassigned fund balance, but before that,
Well,
is it a common
well, we've, from an SAU budget perspective, we've,
outside of regular budgeting? I mean,
Okay.
on an emergency basis.
Yes, actually, when we had had a BA quit and we had to bring in interim people, it was more than we had in the budget, so we had to go to the fund balance at that time. I don't remember how much it
Yeah.
was, but
All right.
but that was, yeah, it was a while ago.
it was about 6 or 7 years ago. Maybe.
And I think your second question was, do we want to recommend that in 2020, that position is funded from the fund balance? Well, my answer would be no, it's a budget item.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
just my opinion.
Mhm.
I really want to take it out of the unassigned fund balance, but I'm concerned that it would lower it a bit too much to be comfortable with. I'm gonna have to
Yes, that's-
reluctantly agree to take it out of the budget.
Yeah, but that's more of a question for, we're talking about for the 54,000 for
Amy.
FY20.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, that's just because, she's agreeing to stay on to help for the 1 year, so it's a 1 year thing, so that wouldn't carry into 2021 then, if she's only going to be helping us out for a
Well,
year.
I'm sure it will somehow, it'll just be crossed out different.
The thing is, that alternatively, we accept a lot of risk by having a much lower than targeted unassigned fund
Yes.
balance. So then, what we may do next year as a committee is propose that we plus up the unassigned fund balance. So
Mhm.
either way, you're gonna cover that, you're gonna have an increase in dollars there.
Just be sensitive to the fact that the fund
Necessarily.
balance is taxpayer dollars. And
Yeah.
they're not in the taxpayer's pocket, they're in the town's pocket or the school district's pocket, but they're
Yeah.
not the school district's money.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind when you're setting those levels.
Yeah. Well, also it doesn't
Sure, but
necessarily.
I mean, how else do you mitigate or cover risk? If you-
Yeah, it's a
Well,
balance.
well-
It's a balance,
Right.
but
Right, so understood, but
Yeah.
yes, we're doing risk management, and so.
Well, we have far greater risk with just in the schools themselves and have no unreserved. We have a $100,000 contingency, $142,000 for a retained fund balance. So, see, under $250,000 on a $24-ish million budget. So that's the only that's a far lower percentage. And I'm not sure in Brookline, but in Hollis, it's I think a $90,000 contingency for 2 buildings on an $11 million budget. So when we're talking about risk mitigation, I would say from a percentage basis, the SAU probably has the most limited risk potential and the greatest coverage.
So I guess
So
that's a good point.
However,
Yeah,
I think
but-
the school districts have the opportunity to go back to the taxpayers to get
That's
additional
true.
funding, and the
Mhm.
SAU does not have
Yeah.
another way.
I was gonna say, something drives that target, which I
Yeah.
believe
Right.
was provided from a consulting agency or something.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
not sure where it
it's
comes
kind
from.
of housed in kind of GASB rules and things like that, and just solid financial reporting, and it's something that the Hollis town is trying to manage and mitigate because they're in a position of allowing the unreserved fund balance to have escalated due to excess revenue that couldn't they just couldn't assume that certain levels were going to see so much excess revenue. So from a good place, the town's bringing in more money, but on the other side, so it's the opposite problem of how to and their the ranges that they've gotten from the DRA, GASB rules, Moody's, things like that, are actually higher than 10%, but they're bringing it down and scaling it back to
They're
that.
already at that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it's kind of housed in that and how the towns are looking at things too. Okay. Thank you, Lauren. I'm sorry for the oversight on that. I appreciate you pointing that out. It was a good discussion. Okay.
By accident, but okay.
Take the credit, but yeah.
Okay. So I don't want to do that. Hold on a minute.
Should we spend a few minutes on the bond for the
Sure.
fields?
Let's tackle that before, and then we'll get into the guidance discussion. So, John, maybe you can give us a little bit. I shared with everyone the link to the agenda and the documents that were available for the meeting the school board had last night regarding the funding for the turf field. And if you could maybe explain what took place, what you ended up deciding, and how we're moving forward.
So we had 4 proposals from 3 institutions. 2 were from TD Bank. One was a no penalty on prepayment with a higher rate, and one was a lower rate with a prepayment penalty calculation. The only one that was fully compliant was the one from First National. That was also the one recommended by our, who it is exactly?
Bond council.
Yeah, the bond council. And so after there was some discussion last night, mostly around understanding the different proposals and the terms, but ultimately the board selected to move forward with the First National bond. So that's a 3.8% interest rate. Total interest cost is $348,407. The term's 10 years, annual payments.
And
And no prepayment
And
penalty.
that's cheaper than the TD Bank.
It's cheaper than the TD Bank by like $1,000, maybe $500 in interest. The TD Bank proposal that has it's comparable in terms of prepayment, no prepayment penalty. The TD Bank that had the comparable interest rate was a lower interest cost by $21,000
Over 10 years.
Over 10. I think the term
I
was it
think
10 years
it's
for
10,
theirs
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
But the prepayment, there's a prepayment penalty formula.
And the TD Bank
supplied under the TD Bank one, and we're expecting that we will have some funds from our side that can offset some of this cost, and we wanted to have the opportunity to be able to apply prepayment
Do we have an idea how much has been pledged?
I don't know.
So just regarding what that, choosing that bond results in 10 level payments. There's no interest payment due this year on that one?
That's a good question. I think because of the timing, no.
Okay, so right now we have about $28,000 in this budget that we had set aside for the interest that we could use to prepay the,
There you go.
because we're not making, because of the way the funding works, there's no half-year interest-only payment. It's just 10
So we could
level
reduce
funded
it from
amounts.
the total budget
We could.
guidance, or we can
No,
actually keep
because-
it there and pay principal. Right?
I don't know how,
Yeah. No,
timing-wise,
and I'm
I
not
don't
even
know.
positive about that.
Yeah.
yet.
Well, because but I'm looking at the amortization schedule, and it looks like the first payment is due on 8/15/2019,
Yes.
and the 10,
That was how we submitted everything.
yeah,
so.
and the 10 payments with $348,000 ends in 8/15/2028. So it looks like we don't have a payment for this year. Okay.
So it'll be simplest just to borrow less,
Oh.
borrow $28,000 less.
We could. I don't know that. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
think you guys discussed that.
No,
So,
Andy's going, has to go back to them and
yeah, I know we're under a time crunch because we're trying to
I think by December 6th.
close. Yeah, we're trying to close on December 17th, and the board has to do some signing of documents on their board meeting on the 12th. So I can ask him about this. Yes.
We don't have any idea what's pledged. And my concern is that we ended up paying, I think we probably ended up paying 100 basis points more for a, prepayment ability. And so, over the life of the bond, we paid $150,000 or $200,000 more in interest, unless we're gonna prepay it,
So,
that's not good.
no, it's 21,000 at most.
But 1% of,
It's not 1%.
no, we're paying 1% more. I think the municipal bond bank would be at 2.8
Oh,
for a municipal bond that was did not have a prepayment option.
Well, the bond bank was not in the consideration for.
No, I know, but
Oh.
that's because we went out to people that we could prepay for.
I see what you're saying.
we
Well, and I
went to
think
New Hampshire
again, that
Bond
was the
Bank-
timing of it all as well, because we would have had to wait much longer to go with the bond bank.
Well, I know, but maybe we could have a bond anticipation note from a local bank for 6 months.
Perhaps.
My only concern is too late now, I guess, but I think we paid $150,000 more in interest for the ability to prepay. And so I hope we're gonna prepay.
yeah, Andy had some estimates, but I just don't remember.
I guess to your point, if the pledge amount is 25,000, is
Yeah, there's a crossover.
it's a lot different from a pledge amount of 150,000,
Mhm.
because you want to cover the extra point you're talking about here,
Yeah,
right?
I don't remember. There was some discussion about the bond bank, and we chose not to go that route, and I don't wanna misspeak.
I think it was because they don't offer a prepayment ability to prepay.
Yeah, but there was some discussion yesterday too, and I think Andy had reiterated, I don't recall that being the number, the primary reason.
Well, the other problem is they only do their issues in June.
Yeah,
I
it
think
was-
that's the
I think
biggest
it-
reason.
I think it was a timing thing,
Yeah.
right?
What, the bond bank? They do an earlier one, but we missed it. They do January, but,
And this whole lawsuit put this into the,
Yes,
zone.
yeah.
yeah.
So this lawsuit has cost
Really
us
was, yeah.
$150,000 in
In
insurance.
addition to the
No,
cost
it
of the
Well-
litigation.
It didn't.
Well, there was a trade-off of, do we, do we do what voters wanted in a timely manner and go forward with the project? Right, and so with that as the primary concern, then that removed the bond bank as an option.
Right.
Well, I'm not sure it did. I'm not sure we couldn't go to a local bank and get a bond anticipation note, just like we get a tax anticipation note.
I don't know.
And go to the bond bank, get a 2.8% loan or bond, I think it would have saved us $150,000. And so my point to go back is, if we don't have commitments that are worth a couple $100,000 to prepay, it wasn't the wise decision. So we needed to know what was pledged before we made that decision.
And I think at one point, Andy had come here, and he gave us the sense of what that amount, pledge amount was.
Yeah. I think I have an idea, but I don't want to say because I don't know for sure. So what, can
Could
we
you-
follow
Can
up?
we
Yeah.
take an action?
Yeah, we'll follow up.
Would you like me to, or do you want?
I'll do it, that's fine.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have the answer.
I mean, there must have been a good reason for justifying the extra,
Yeah,
the ability to prepay, right?
yeah.
And a lot can happen over 10 years too, so it isn't like this pledge has to be known now. Maybe that, the pledge commitment, maybe this can be sustained for a while.
Well, the impetus to pledge, though, would be to get the job done. Once the job's funded up, there's not a lot of incentive to
That's true,
make a charitable contribution.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get some of that information just so that we have it. We'll do, and I think the increase you're talking about, Dave, is related to the interest rate of
Right.
waiting, and then we have the additional piece of the
Right.
the portion that Lauren was talking about.
When it was approved in March, and if you went forward in April, it would have been through the bond bank at a less interest rate.
Yeah,
And exploring TD Bank and all the rest probably would have been much of an option because of rates, whether there's penalties or not, correct? I just want to understand completely where we are and why we're where we at, and why this project's going to cost more money than it should have last March.
But we
Okay.
wouldn't have gone to the bond bank anyway, even if it was able, because they don't offer bonds that are with the ability to prepay.
Okay? And that was never an option.
Well,
No,
I'm
that's-
not sure that's true. I
Yeah.
think they were seriously looking at it at that time because the timing was right. I don't think prepay was the number one
I think the
reason.
interest was so
it was the lower interest rate, I think, that was driving that.
than it would
Yeah.
have actually gone up.
So given the benefit of the doubt, if you're sitting here with a prepay pledges of 250,000, then it makes sense to pay the extra 1% to prepay.
Right.
If you're sitting there with 10K pledges, doesn't make any sense. So somehow at this discussion, when it was decided to go for the one that gives us the ability to prepay, that's because there must be enough pledges to make it make it a low risk.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so we have some things to follow up on.
I know
Okay.
that was, because I had asked Andy, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, that's fine.
I'm really trying to remember, and yesterday I had asked Andy, the bond counselor also felt like this was the best approach. And I was kind of asking, like, well, on what basis? And part of it was that one of our primary objectives was to be able to prepay because Andy had an idea of, an amount, a base amount, not more, that he would be
Mhm.
able to
Listen, if
acquire, so.
if he's sitting back saying, okay, there's say 200,000 out there now, you've got 10 years to raise more.
And he's going to donate his salary for the next
Oh, yeah, sure.
But interest on the loans, do we know what the fee is of the loans? The cost of the loan?
Yeah, we have that. Kelly, you gave me that summary. I probably have it in my bag, so we'll. Oh, do you? That'd be great, John. If you could forward that back to us, that would be
I think
fantastic.
it was more around, I don't know if I.
You had broken it out. Yeah, it was in the summer that you
They
did that,
usually
like in
write it
August.
there
You put
because
that
they-
together.
20,000.
So,
kind of summarizing the whole.
back from, wow, my notes finally come handy, from September. The cost of the annual meeting and turf field lawsuit through August 30th totaled $38,805.
There we go.
The response to the lawsuit was $19,161, and the meeting expenses were $19,644.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money because somebody gets their way. Didn't go what you want. Listen, I think every time that is excluded with interest or with turf, with lawyer costs that affect that should be known. Because that can't be happening every year. Yeah, I understand the vote and the way it was handled, everything was through the, you know, the, you know, it's absurd. It's kind of,
And so we'll talk about that for town meeting when we get a little bit further about some of the changes and modifications to the meeting structure and things like that. So.
You want a motion to adjourn?
No, I don't, because I do not. And I know that it is 8:30, and we try very, very hard to stick to the 2-hour rule. We also try really, really hard, and we've always, for at least the past 5 years, provided final guidance as a result of the November meeting, because we only have December and January meeting before a February public hearing. And I think, given, I will absolutely take a motion to adjourn, but I think given the budget levels and percentages that we're talking about, we have to have a conversation about guidance. It is.
It was only a general reminder. That
Okay, no, it's not. It was. I have 8:32 right down here, and I appreciate you doing your job.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
I think that conversation, given the large amounts of increases this year, that discussion will take longer than the next few minutes.
Oh, I'm not saying it's going to be like a 2-minute conversation,
Right.
but then
would it make sense to have another,
Well, having a workshop at some point, I don't know.
right, you know, because there's a couple of things I think we're going to be discussing, aside, you know, before we have the budget too, right?
There's a lot to absorb
There's
here.
a lot, and it's 8:30, and I'll be here till midnight with you guys, you know that.
Madam Chair, why don't we give it 30 minutes to see where we are?
Okay, I appreciate that.
So I'd rather
Let's do
spend
that.
30 minutes now than come back for another meeting.
Yeah.
So.
45?
Meeting
Are
out.
we going for 45?
No?
Okay, 30.
Okay, so
Actually, 30.
as a reminder to where we left our preliminary guidance, we had preliminary operating budget guidance, which would be the operating budget warrant article amount of $22,976,880. Yes, 880. That represented a a 6.3% increase from the I'm sorry, that with consideration, I'm sorry, let me start again. The 22,976,880 would represent a 6% increase from the adjusted operating budget article from last year. So if we took this past March's operating budget article, which was $21,294,000, and adjusted that for the approved first year approval of the HEA contract and the second year of the HESA contract, because those items become baseline operating budget items, the operating budget would look like $21,675,775. This is on the preliminary FY20 guidance spreadsheet. So from operating to operating, article to article, with that adjustment for last year, we would be at a 6% increase with preliminary guidance. Overlaying additional articles, excluding the STEM Innovation Center, and this was as of the preliminary guidance meeting we had last month. The total warrant would have been in the $24,200,000 range, which is a 6.3% increase from last year's total budget of $22,767. So that's where we left things as a result of our last meeting. So looking toward final guidance, we had a discussion tonight about, let me start at the top. One of the things we talked about at the last meeting was an adjustment to the guidance multiplier just to remind everyone what the guidance multiplier represented. It represented CPI against the non-salary and benefit guidance-based budget. The one thing I did not consider in that guidance-based budget was that administrative salaries are not addressed by the contracts, the HESA and HEA agreements. So Kelly gave me some supplemental information regarding the salary levels, and because I take NHRS and benefits out in total, I've basically accounted for that. So the adjustment to the guidance multiplier would be adding in an additional 1.4 million into the calculation, and that would have resulted in so keeping kind of apples to apples of how we would have considered it, it would have moved the guidance base multiplier from 0.76% to 0.95%. So that, okay. Hold on a minute. So we have to do a couple of other things. That was just at the top. I'm kind of working down the spreadsheet. And then we would need to consider additional debt service. We have to pay it, and that was not considered in any of the views of, I put in the payment, the $200,840.56. Okay. So debt service goes up from the 620 to 821,032, and that would move. And the only other things that Kelly had requested consideration and relief for were for the drinking water testing at each of the schools. There's a state mandate that every faucet be tested. How often do we have to do that?
Every year for, I want to say it's 3 years in a row.
Okay. The dry tank replacements and an estimate on the bus contract, which we haven't even talked about, where we stand with the transportation contract. So that was another $125,000 of relief.
Which means an increase
Yes.
in the budget, in the budget guidance amount. So
yes.
So
if you were to, so we would then be increasing from 22 million on the operating budget, 22,976,880 to 23,310,735.
Which is like another 400 and some.
Which would be a 7.5% increase operating budget to operating budget, and after adding in the other articles excluding the Innovation Center, we would be at a 7.7% increase from last year's budget. So we need to, I just want to replace a number here. So your amount being
what were last year's, what are we calling them? What were last year's guidance relief items?
I'm not sure.
We didn't have any. We didn't have any. Our GMR was negative. one.
Mm-hmm. And you're doing the guidance multiplier slightly differently this
Yeah,
year,
we
so I
did
think
that differently.
Accounts for why we didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So why are we doing it differently this year?
Actually, I think this is a better way of doing it, because the concern we had that was brought up last year was that we were considering CPI and adjustments on I'm looking at Lauren because he's the one who brought it to our attention. We were considering an adjustment to guidance, an adjustment based on CPI to a base that already was going to be incremented because of a contract. So it was like a double increase on the salary side of things. So this multiplier takes out HEA and HESA salary-related impacts and says, okay, with they get addressed separately, with what's left, we'll apply CPI to that. Okay. So that's why we changed the multiplier this year, and it's consistent with how the Hollis budget.
So you really need to have 3 multipliers. One for the contracts, one for the everything else, and one for the administrators?
No, because HEA and HESA don't get a multiplier because HEA has a standardized contract. It's already approved. And HESA, while it's not approved, we know the amount because it's been calculated, so we are layering that in as an additional warrant article. And the increases for the administrative staff would be are addressed in the budget,
There's no
in the
way
budget
there-
itself,
yeah, there's
so.
no way there- way to do that.
So,
So one simple question, we go through these views, 1, 2, 3, 3, 1, 3, 2. Has there been any, since we were met last month, has there been any additional efforts to try to reduce anything?
Well, yeah.
well, that was your round 3.
So the discussion we had some zeros from some amount.
Well, that's the but
So
the,
that's where we are in the
so
F20
that's
round
the
3.
amount in the round 3 budget
So
that,
it's not round 4 or round 5.
well, we always go to round 4.
Yeah, round 4 is it.
So right now, if you were to look at the budget trend sheet that went out, column AF total, 24,351 currently excludes the extra. The superintendent's view has the 24,5 here, and so that's really in column H. That's the estimated adjustment. And that's like our fully loaded, except for the Innovation Center view. So this 24,351 is really, Kelly, you had 186,000 because there was no school board decision
No,
yet.
yeah, that was last month.
But now there is a school board decision,
so I can
so
change that
we
number.
will update that, and so that would be another 200,000. So 24,552, 793
Is what?
would be the fully loaded budget
Recommended or asked for?
asked
Okay,
for.
what was our guidance?
Okay, wait a minute, I have to just change a cell here. Our guidance, okay. Our guidance was, on the operating budget, 22,976,880.
Versus,
And that's a 7.5% increase.
No,
No,
that was last,
that
preliminary.
was that's the 6% increase.
so we're looking
That's
for
6.
No, no.
That was the preliminary, and
I'm
that's a
sorry.
6% increase.
I'm sorry, I'm already jumped ahead. So what would our guidance be if we accepted the,
That would be 7.6%
versus 6.3.
in our
versus
guidance?
6 on guidance.
So
That we agreed to last meeting?
6% was the one we agreed to on the last meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
So if
So agreeing to that final amount, I'm sorry, wait a minute, I was on the wrong sheet. I'm sorry, I have too many spreadsheets. Sorry, it would be a 7.5% increase. I had it
versus 6.
versus 6.
That's
Sorry.
based on the total
That's
budget
based
from
on,
round
that's
three.
based on revising the guidance multiplier, adding in $200,000 for debt service, and keeping those relief, aside from the GMR increase as a relief item, the drinking water, the dry tank, and the bus contracting increase.
So
So is
the
it
what-
explaining-
So that number
Yeah.
would be 23,310,735.
those are,
So explain to me again, or to us again, the 200,000 debt relief, the additional one.
The number we had in the previous view of the budget was this year's number, without consideration of a bond for the turf field, the bond cost
But
for
we're
the
not
turf
paying
field,
anything till next August.
which is the FY20 budget, which is going to be an additional $200,840
That's the result of the vote
payment.
last night.
Yes, and moving forward with the project.
So all these items that increase it from 6 to 7.5 are mandatory at this point. We're already committed to them because they're either
Well, we're
mandated by
absolutely,
the
well,
state,
we're
or it's
absolutely,
it's
The
a
tank
safety
replacement.
issue,
The day tank replacement
or
is
you have to pay
absolutely,
the approved
yes.
bond, right?
Okay,
Yeah, we have to pay, we have to pay it. So.
Yes, we have to pay it.
So, is there,
Well, it's not, yes, if we accept the fact that the $14 million is immutable, then we can't change anything.
Right.
But maybe we don't need as many laptops, or, I
Right.
don't know what it is, but.
Right.
There are other
Yeah, okay.
things in
So
the
maybe
budget
we can take
cut.
a simple approach that says, okay, we're gonna stick to the previous guidance and, please, find a way to reduce other areas.
What's the dollar amount difference between previous guidance and sorry, I'm trying to look at these huge complex spreadsheets on my
Sorry.
little cell phone here.
it's not conducive, it really
It's
is.
hard to find.
It's
a bigger device.
What's the difference between these two numbers here?
It's 333, 855, difference from preliminary guidance.
So $250,000 difference. That's a
Yeah,
lot.
basically, 3.5, yeah.
Where are we on the transportation contract?
That will come in on December 7th.
Let me,
And we had an estimate.
I'm sorry, I have to check. I'm so sorry. I have to check one more thing on the SAU. Which SAU view is in this budget? The budget trend
The
view.
correct number.
So it's been updated in
Yes, I believe so.
round.
Yeah, 878,364.
Okay.
That's the transportation one?
No, that was the
That's
SAU budget.
Sorry, we digressed. from-
364. Okay.
Everybody bring their own vehicle, right? Instead of, bring your own device.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in Hudson, we had, in high school, it was 2 miles less. You had to walk to the, 2 miles to school.
Oh, my.
The end of our street where the bus stop was 1.5.
Okay, so
My house at the end, I'm like,
878, 364. This is where we are.
good.
So we have to take a vote tonight?
Well, we have to issue final guidance. Yes.
So I'm going to apologize for being a few minutes late from at the very beginning. So I missed the early part of the discussion, but one important part that was obviously discussed that I missed was the discussion. There's an item in here to add a teacher's position at the high school. It says for class size reduction. What was the justification for that, or what was the argument for that?
Well, the school board, and John might want to talk to this instead of me, but the school board has a policy on how many students in classes, and the high school is currently over that in several areas. So they originally wanted 2 teachers to reduce that class size. They've dropped 1, and that's what that represents. And John, if you want
It's not just like slightly over, there's many classes, and we're not just over the target size, we're over the max targeted size. So there's like a targeted number, and then there's a max where you can see that many classes.
Yep. But those.
Target max change for 4.
Yeah, they are different. It depends on the course and
But we should also keep in mind that.
more interaction and other.
But we should also keep in mind those are goals and not necessarily legal requirements.
And
There is a state legal thing, but as long as we're under that.
well, that was my next question. So how far under the policy, how far under the state maximums are our policies?
Do we get any data from the last meeting on class sizes in other districts and what the goals were for various school boards?
I'm not sure if that was collected or not. I did not collect that.
Yeah, okay. I don't know who, it was a to-do for somebody, but I don't know who it was.
I hope it wasn't me, because
I'm sure it wasn't.
I know online a lot of that information is available, but might be a couple of years old. I think I don't remember which website, but I know there's a website you can go to see that type of data, because the state collects that type of data. So, like I said, I think it's a couple of years old, but it'll give us an idea.
Yeah.
We went over that a few years back, didn't we?
For discussion, I'd make a motion. I would move that we stick to our original guidance of 22,976.
And I second.
And my logic is that
motion.
We got a great school with great programs, but we may be coming to the point where there's certain things we can't do, whether it's a ski instructor for the junior high or whether it's more iPads or, I mean, maybe for 6.5% increase, I just got to say, you know, maybe there's some things we can't do. So that would be my logic on that.
Now, that number does not include the 200 in debt service, right?
Correct.
So we'd essentially be saying we're asking you to find that out of the budget somewhere else rather than increasing the budget for it.
I mean, we're going from what, 2.5 to roughly 6.5 in 1 year. And so
Yeah, I mean,
the population is gonna ask what happened and why.
On top of
It's-
that,
You know?
the fire and then also the security issue they're talking about. I think that needs to be addressed partially, not over 5 years.
I have full
Well-
confidence we're going to get the grant.
Well,
we should pay
Pretty
for it.
confident about that.
great.
What are we gonna not gonna, okay, my question then, gentlemen, is what are we not gonna do? Are we not gonna do football? Are we not, what are we not gonna do?
Right.
We always talk about what we're gonna do, but at some point,
Yeah.
all I'm saying is when you start talking to the taxpayers about a 7 or 10% increase, you know, what are we not gonna do? There has to be a limit. So anyway, that's,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think,
We're not gonna make everybody happy, then, that's for sure.
Well, so I'm new to this, right, but I'll say, I think when we gave our preliminary guidance and now up until this point, we've been pretty happy that everything's been justifiable, it makes sense, they seem to be being fiscally responsible. We're still not gonna be under, you know, meeting our policy of being under class sizes, I don't think 2 teachers would have gotten us there, and now they've dropped to 1. So I just personally feel like it's almost arbitrary to say, we're just gonna stick to this other guidance, just because 6% seems kinda high. Like, I feel like there should be some basis, if there is basis for it, I'm happy to hear it, but just saying, you know, at one point it was 1.5, now it's 6, that seems too high. So bring the budget down just seems sort of arbitrary.
Okay, I'll say we've never presented a budget with a 6% increase to the town.
Okay, what would be like the average, I guess?
2 to 3.
mm-hmm.
I'm worried
So
about
now we're
this is-
coming in with 6%, 6, not the 7.5. The 6% on the operating side. We're going to overlay an innovation center in a year where both towns were revalued and a significant level of the community had reductions, but a significant level of the community had tax increases.
Yeah, and at the elementary levels, we're gonna have similar numbers,
Yeah.
which is very, very concerning.
So,
I don't know what the Hall's elementary levels are,
Their operating budget's around 3,
okay.
3.5%.
Brookline,
Could
you know,
be.
we had our meeting last night on our round, our
What's it look like?
operating to operating, I think was it 7%?
7%.
Fully loaded to fully loaded
Yeah.
was 9%.
Yep.
Which we're
And-
definitely,
This is good information.
And this is
So
on
when
top
you-
of the fact that the taxpayers in Brookline just got a tax bill that was an increase, you know, in the like 9 to 12% range for everybody. So that's where these concerns are coming from. So we want to keep this budget, you know, I think what they've been proposing is absolutely justifiable. There's no golden fountains in here by any stretch of the imagination. And they do have, the administration does have, and we have, a mandate from the voters to provide quality education here. But we're now seeing the friction between the desire or the desire and the need to do that with the fact that we've got all of these other expenses that are really exploding the budget that are outside of our control at this point, on top of the fact that it's not only this school district, it's the other school district, it's at least in Brookline. That's a tremendous amount of conflict to try to handle for 1 year. And the way that we've kind of resolved some of these in the past is to try to minimize things for 1 year and to shift things over to the next year when some of those conditions aren't there.
Right.
Hopefully.
And, with Brookline's going up last year,
Mhm.
after much controversy, you could do bond for the field. Now, when you move the stem cell at a 6%, 47.5% increase, it's definitely going to be a fight this year.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. And then next year, we're going to be about 4 or 5%. Who knows? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My concern is making sure we have everything we need. Tonight, we found out there's an extra 340,000 that we really have no control over, other than cutting previous to that.
Mhm.
You know, but what Lauren's saying, we gave guidance at 6%, which is 2 to 3 times more than we've ever done. And to sit here tonight saying, well, let's throw another 1.5%, and you know, it's, if there was anybody listening at home, they're on their way down here. You know what I mean?
So let me ask a question. If we take a vote and stick to the original guidance, that will force the superintendent and you to go back and readjust the budget proposal, if you will,
Yeah, it looks like
to make changes, right?
yeah, it looks like we'll be having to find 200 and some odd thousand.
Just to give you, I mean, my sense is, having been here now several years, in previous years, I know we've had workshops to maybe go through more thoroughly through the complete budget, all the lines, to maybe discuss them in more detail. So maybe that would have helped in maybe finding additional areas where.
Well, what's happened in the past, even between changes in preliminary or final guidance, when we've had a gap to close, we spend the next two meetings attempting to close the gap or understanding the impacts if we can't, and what that then means. So I would, if we end up saying we're staying with preliminary guidance, I would expect Kelly and Andy to come back and say, okay, to get there, we need to do this. And offer a refined budget,
Sure.
tell us the things that wouldn't be cut. I don't anticipate there being a significant amount of unreserved fund balance left for this year. In the past, when we've had to kind of close these gaps, we've had one year it was like a 3-phase plan of what would be, how the unreserved fund balance would be used to cover the things that were eliminated from a budget. I'm not anticipating that, but
that's when we thought we would have an unreserved.
right. But
now
that's what
we're
I'm saying.
gonna
For this,
freeze.
I'm not anticipating us having a significant
sure.
amount. And what that also, just one more quick thing, allows us to do is work to refining some of working toward the revenue estimates, seeing where those are, and then working toward tax impacts and things like that. Sorry.
So historically and accurately, we've always taken out debt service above.
Yep.
Now down below here,
I add it back in at the current level. But do you see there where it was the same?
should it be added?
It should be higher because we have
Where is it?
to pay for the turf field.
Where did you add it back in?
Add back amounts outside of guidance. You see that header? Starts with prior year guidance base, goes to the multiplier.
There. Okay, so you added back, but we didn't add back in the
Enough.
200.
Right.
The increase.
And that's what you increased it tonight.
So don't we have to add back in the 200?
That's what just asked, yeah.
If we add back in that 200, that puts us,
Somewhere between 6 and 7.5.
let me just take this out. I have to take out 110.
Put us around 7%.
If I add it back in and take out, and the only other relief item added in is the GMR increase, that moves us to $23,196,171, and that's a 7% increase from last year's operating budget.
Yeah, you just get a number that you've been looking at for, as far as the field donations, because now it's 501c3 or whatever. Has there been any, one unit's talk of actual donations also for like robotics or for other things that we're looking for in the budget? Has that been
I think you would need a
Outside
whole
the
committee
budget.
that just goes out and does fundraising and things
That's what
like that.
HB Elevates
Yeah.
is.
So wherever that board and that committee is, stands at this point.
Consider that at all, but I'm
No.
just thinking, you know, we can get 250, the football fields or the sports field, can we get 20 robotics or something, you know, I'm sure there's companies out there, but.
So,
I don't
So I
disagree,
think,
I don't disagree that my number is arbitrary. I mean, to say it's 6.5 is high or low or different is arbitrary, it is
It is.
arbitrary. But it's a little bit like a federal budget. I mean, it's guns and butter, so at some point you can't afford, at some point, something has to change.
Like, certainly the context, you know, that you guys mentioned helps.
Yes.
Sure.
So at any rate, I'll stay with, my motion's on the floor.
okay, so we have the Lauren motion to maintain offer,
To maintain.
maintain preliminary guidance as final guidance.
I said,
Earl seconded it.
now, when you say preliminary guidance, you mean,
It's
you're referring to
20
the
it was-
final number,
Well, it's
not
go-
the
it-
percentage that we use? which we
Right, it's gonna
suggested.
be, it would be the same 22,976,880.
22, 9.
And so Darlene,
So not a percent, we're gonna say, we're gonna have the number in there for operating, this is,
The
we're
op-
talking just operating budget.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
So that's the number on the preliminary guidance spreadsheet
Yeah,
that does include the relief items.
it does not include the relief items.
Well, no,
No, it's not added in. See how they said pending, pending, pending?
Okay.
Not, see, it says pending not included on the spreadsheet,
so
in,
it's likely to go
in
higher.
the spreadsheet.
in here?
Yeah.
It says pending not included in preliminary guidance.
Oh, I didn't put that back.
I took them out because,
Okay.
because when we did preliminary guidance, we did not, they were not in there.
Right.
So I added a second sheet for the final FY '20
Right, I saw
guidance,
that.
and I added them in, but
Okay.
that's, so, but they're not included in here.
So the end result of all this is that after all the hearings over the next several months and eventually the town meeting, it may be decided by the public to add the money that was taken out, and change the, you know, this is just the budget guidance.
Yeah, I think
There's no rule that says we have to agree with the school
Sure.
board or,
And I think it's reasonable to ask, you know, what, to Lauren's point, what would you take out if you had to?
Okay, we'll
And to
identify.
Darlene's point, you know, then that gives us a chance to see what
Sure.
the impact could be and
right.
And
maybe
then
one of those
decide.
we're accepting or whatever, and then we have better information to go forward.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll-
because just so that you know too, John, while we've, in the past, we have had like final guidance and made modifications to it. So just so that, you know, you know that that's like part of
I mean,
the
on one-
process
on
as
one
well.
hand, you know, coming out of the last meeting, there were some relief items that we knew that we decided not to include, which, again, being new, I'm kind of like, okay, we'll wait till the next meeting, you had said we could put it in. But, so there's all this stuff we know that makes a whole lot of sense, like we've talked about. Then on the other hand, to Lauren's point, you know, at some point, it becomes maybe unpalatable, and given what you guys have said about the other budgets, in total, you know, it does seem
But typically,
unusual.
the other thing I would throw out is based on past history, when we've had these conflicts, we haven't had any major disagreements for years, but years ago, when there was a wide disparity, or even a small disparity, the school, at the time, I'm not saying it'll happen now, but the school board response always was, gotta lay off 2 teachers. That's all we can do. Well, it's probably not the place to start,
Yeah.
you know, so we need you to take a really look at it.
And ultimately, you need to have some sort of prioritization.
Sure.
And either the cutback, you take 0.5% from everybody's budget, or maybe you reduce some others more than others. Or eliminate some things for now. And I don't think, yeah, I think you've gone through some exercise like that already, because all
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
like you were saying earlier, it seems like all the requests, it seem legitimate to me. I mean,
No, and you can look view over view and see where things have dropped out,
right.
you know, and
So I think we're at the point where whatever reductions are made, if any, is going to hurt.
But they've already spent money screwing the fat, now they're
Yeah.
yeah.
Closer to the bone.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
But the advantage of this is that we can see what's taken out, and we can go back and we can say, well, you know, add back in, you know, this item and that item and such, and then we'll draw the line there. We can at least see, you know, what the options are for where to draw the line.
Okay.
Okay.
Any more discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to maintain, to recommend final guidance at the same level of preliminary guidance of $22,976,880, please signify by aye.
That's everybody, right?
That's everyone unanimous, 700. Please don't make a motion for adjournment. I have a couple of quick things, and one of them is about our next meeting. So, hold on a minute. Yes, Merry Christmas. And
December, right?
we did set the town meeting date for. Can get the right calendar up. 2019. March 6th and 7th.
That sounds right.
It's scheduled to be a 2-night event
When you mean the co-op school budget.
for the co-op budget.
Oh, the co-op budget.
Yeah, not the town meeting.
Did I say town? I'm
You said
sorry.
town.
I meant the co-op. So it is scheduled to be a 2-night meeting. I don't have the firm timelines yet, but there will be firm timelines for start and end, and firm agenda on how things will proceed through the evening. There'll be a different ballot, things like that.
Now, in the past, we've had those two meetings maybe back to back. Is that
Yeah, the 6th and 7th.
okay?
Mhm.
All right.
And then
No,
there's-
not
and
back
there's-
to back in 2 days. Like back to back within the same day.
No, on the
These are the
6th.
meetings. These are the meetings where we have to take a position on all the warrant articles.
No, that's in the February public
Okay.
hearing, which is on Wednesday, the 6th
Okay,
of
all right,
February.
right,
So it's the 6th in February and
Yeah.
the 6th and 7th of March, with the snow day on the 8th in March.
Public hearing is February 6th.
February 6th.
Okay.
Okay. Given the lateness of the hour and the fact that we've already extended the meeting by almost 40 minutes, John, we're going to hold on the school board update, and I'm going to encourage everyone to please review the agenda, the board packets. If you have time, maybe you could just watch the live stream archive. But John did give us an update of last night's meeting, so we'll at least have that update. I don't believe. Oh, so the next item then is just our meeting for December. The fourth Wednesday of December is December 27th. We have not met that week when we've had a fourth Wednesday meeting, but the administration is in that week on Thursday, right?
I will be. I can't speak for
Yeah.
everyone else, but
So, and the December meeting has also been typically a joint meeting with the school board.
oh, you're not going to get them on that day.
No, I know I'm not going to get them on that day. So the only other option would be if I could contact Tom Solon and see if there's a way on the Wednesday, the 19th. Is that their meeting
Yes, but that's the Brookline board meeting.
on a Wednesday?
Well, it's,
Yeah,
You
ours
changed
always-
it?
No, they're always Wednesdays now.
Oh, you
But-
took our date. That's
Yes,
right.
but we
Oh,
had
you
we
moved
had a
back
couple
because of
weeks, we're not gonna do it
Christmas.
because of Christmas
So
week.
when is the co-op meeting?
The 12th.
The 12th.
The 12th.
That'd be a
The
week from
12th.
Wednesday. So that works for me.
That's not gonna get any.
Yeah, I'm sweating.
How about the?
Oh,
I'm not.
sure, yeah.
I mean, if you have a quorum, you can meet. I'm not available on the 12th.
How
So
about the 20th?
Well, never mind.
Thursday, I'm not available on Thursday, the 20th.
What do you do?
You need to be available.
25th.
Yeah, everybody will be around.
Can we have it the first week in January?
Well, January is a long month, so there's actually, yes, we could do the first week in January and also have a meeting on the fourth week in January.
Yeah, why not?
Because
do
we have the
that.
3rd and the 31st, and then right after the 31st, the following week is the public hearing.
That works.
It would be,
The third.
it would be the
The third.
3rd, Thursday the 3rd.
All right,
That sounds good to me.
could do that.
And then we'd also meet Thursday, the 31st, and then we would also meet for the public hearing,
31st or the 24th?
the 31st. Oh, that's right, we normally
The
do the 4th. That's a fifth Wednesday. Well, we could do either the 4th or the 5th. Yep, actually, the 24th would be better, because then that's
More
2
time for
weeks
the
to the
public
public hearing. Thank you, Brian. So yes, we could meet the 3rd of January, the 24th of January, and the 6th of February. And then
That works for me.
Yep.
everyone good?
Well, that doesn't allow for a Christmas party.
We can bring the leftovers.
It'll be a cheaper
We can
Christmas
bring
party.
the,
Yeah, you can do
the
the
New Year's
after-
Eve leftovers on the 3rd. So
Seventh meeting is the
All
third.
right.
what?
So,
The December meeting is January 3rd.
third. Yep.
Okay. And I'll offer that to the school board as well as a joint meeting and see if
Sure.
they can do that.
They're
We
going to
can
be
do that.
disappointed they can't throw a Christmas party.
They
for
are.
us.
I know it. I know, Tom. I know it. Okay. Thank you all for your patience. I really appreciate it. We had a lot of good conversation
Can I make a
tonight.
motion to close this meeting?
You may, at 9:12.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So I don't know, we should discuss it.
I'll second that motion.
It's a non-debatable motion. All those in favor?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you, Kelly.
Oh, sure.
This was a tremendous amount of work to get us here, and we've thrown it.